bases dropped on Atlanta, Georgia, the host city of the MLS Eastern Conference Final. Next Wednesday, Atlanta United gets through Philadelphia Union 2-0 to advance to the MLS Eastern Conference Final. They'll host Toronto FC next Wednesday evening. We know out west, LAFC will host the Western Conference Final Tuesday evening. Seattle will be coming to town there after LAFC. El Trafico lived up to the stupid. It was all the way dumb, and it was a 5-3 LAFC win that featured very little defense, a lot of sloppiness, a lot of angry people at the end on both sides, and lots of takes. Lots and lots of takes. Lots of takes about Atlanta and Philadelphia, too. We'll get into those. It's an Overreaction Friday. That's what we're here for. It's all about the takes, whether they are hot and spicy, whether they are an overreaction, an underreaction, an on-par reaction, wherever you want to take it this morning, tweet at us at Soccer Down Here, and we will talk about it. But let's hear what it sounded like last night, both during the match and after the match, from a few folks. It was a playoff match. I mean, it felt like a playoff match. It felt like a match that the margins were pretty narrow. Philadelphia definitely, as the night went on, was feeling the effects of the 120 minutes they played over the weekend to get here. Atlanta United looked fresher. You also had an Atlanta United team that looked very, very, very different than we had seen Atlanta United look in a long time. A back four that had never played together in Mikey Ambrose, Florentine Pogba, Leandro Gonzalez Perez, and Franco Escobar. It was a quartet that was unexpected and one that contributed to a clean sheet, which is a very impressive statement about their individual performances, the performances of veterans like Brad Kazan and Jeff Lorenowitz supporting them, and also of the manager, Frank de Boer, for going in that direction, which was out of the 512 different scenarios that you could go with the lineup in this match. He went with one that was probably on the untested, unsure, freak everybody out side of things. And there was massive freaking out. And it was unfounded. Atlanta United got the job done. They get an early goal in the first 15 minutes that they needed. They were able to get one late to put it away. And it was a... comfortable is not the right word because I wouldn't say comfortable, but it was not as troubling of a match as I think it could have been. And a lot of that's down to the performance of the individuals and the system overall. Early on, it was Julian Gressel, and it was a ball from Pity Martinez who got the start as well, which surprised some folks. That's what gave Atlanta the lead. Here's what it sounded like on 92.9 The Game.
Mikey Ambrose, and he'll overlap now with Barco, and Barco dribbles inside and sends it back to the halfway line. Nagby down the middle to Gressel, pops it through to Pity. Pity at the top of the arc, played back to the right. Gressel with Blake off his line, a chip by Gressel. Score! Gressel, man, he is running wild on you, brother. Playoff style. 1-0 to Atlanta United in the 10th minute.
The goal gave Atlanta the lead. The goal gave Atlanta a big boost. It also pushed Philly into looking for a response very quickly. Brad Kazan made his best play of the night in the 17th minute.
Now it is Jamiro Montero. Oh, a great ball up to Santos, left side of the 18. Cross, Aronson, shot, big save. Guzan rolls out to the edge of the 18. Volley by Bedoya, deflects to the left side of the box and rolls out. Goal kick, big save, Brad Guzan.
Game continued on. Philadelphia made the move that we all expected, going to Ilsinho in the 60-minute mark. Roughly, we'll talk about that and what that did tactically, and honestly, what I think that did to hand the advantage in the match over to Atlanta United, which was not the intended move of the substitution, but it changed the midfield and gave Atlanta more possession, more opportunity to control the game. And Atlanta started to grind Philadelphia down and started also to drop a little bit deeper, going to 5 in the back right before Julian Gressel drop the dime to the king.
Gaddis crosses it right to Julian Gressel at the top of the 18. Gressel with the long ball down the middle, looking for Joseph. Over the head of McKenzie. Joseph in on a breakaway. Joseph shot. Score! This place is worse than bonkers. 2-0 Atlanta United. 10 minutes away from hosting the Eastern Conference Final.
And about 10 minutes later, here's how the final call sounded.
Atlanta United going to the East Final in back-to-back years. Atlanta United 1 win away from playing for the MLS Cup. 1 win away from having the chance to defend their title. Who could have imagined? Full time! Atlanta United will host the Eastern Conference Final. We'll see you Wednesday night. 2-0, they defeat Philadelphia Union.
After the match, Frank DeBoer, Jeff Larinowitz, Leandro Gonzalez-Perez were among the folks speaking to the media. Let's hear from manager Frank DeBoer.
No, of course, everybody knows their role, what we expect them from each other. Both sides, the players from each other, the coaches towards the players, vice versa. So I think we made big steps, and we are much mature. Recognize moments when you don't can press that you come together, also what we show now today. We're playing 4 in the back, that we can adapt very quickly to another system, and that's difficult for an opponent to always have to consider, okay, what are they gonna play? Gonna play with 4-3-3 or with 3 in the back? So I think it was a very mature game today from us. Okay.
Jeff Larinowitz, who was such a huge part of the midfield for most of the match, dropped into the back line when it became a line of 5. Here's what Jeff had to say.
What did you say about Mikey? It's been July since he played last.
It's funny. But Mikey was playing well with the twos, and you could tell that Frank said before the playoffs started we're going to need everyone, and Miles got injured, and I said, Mike, you got to be ready. And then in training he was playing well, and I'm sure that put a thought in Frank's head. And then when Parkey gets injured last game, Mike's the next guy to step up.
And here's a man who a lot of people had concerns about. A lot of people have questioned. I think over 3 years, he's been as good as anyone in the league. I think out of the 3, this year has been his shakiest, and that's still a pretty high bar. But he was immense last night. Leandro Gonzalez-Perez.
He did great. This is why I say all the team is focused on the objective. They train from themselves, and they are good. They are ready to when they have the opportunity, and they are good. So I think he played very good. He did great. He marked very good on the left side, and when he could attack, he did it. And I think he did a great game. After, it's normal with the not playing like a lot. It's normal. He will be tired, but I think he did great. Yeah.
All right, John, let's work backwards from Jeff and LGP giving a lot of praise to a player that very few considered a realistic option in the starting lineup, and even more were scared when his name was in the starting lineup. But Mikey Ambrose gave you a big performance last night.
We saw what he was capable of last season in the relationships that he would have when he was on the left with Miguel Almiron. And this season, you and I and those who either got to watch on ESPN Plus or went up to Fifth Third got to see what Mikey is capable of with his time with Atlanta United too. And Jeff said it, with the injuries at the back, it's like you go to Mikey and it's like, hey, dude, be ready. And you saw what Mikey Ambrose could do last night. And it was a lot of defensive work, and he was always locked in on who was in front of him, not being juked out by any one person or another. But the Mikey Ambrose that you and I and folks who've seen the twos have seen, that was what we got last night.
Yeah, you're talking about a player in Mikey Ambrose who I think would be starting for a lot of teams in this league. I think you're talking about a player who's had awful luck with injuries. last season could have been the main option on the left side when Greg Garza went down, but then he had an injury himself and took him out of the mix. Chris McCann stepped up and was a huge element of Atlanta United going down the stretch last year. This year, it's been the same. It's been injuries and bad luck and changes in shape. And Mikey Ambrose, instead of putting his head down and sulking like you see so many players do because they all want to play, they're all hungry to play, he took the opportunity to go play with Atlanta United too. Stephen Glass was on our pregame show on 92.9 The Game and talked about how early in the season it was Florentine Pogba. Into the season, it was Mikey Ambrose, two guys who are very serious professionals who want to be the best player they can possibly be. And if that means staying sharp with Atlanta United too, and if that means getting on a bus, if that means flying to Indianapolis to play, if that means going to play on a back line with 2 or 3 teenagers who are chasing the professional soccer dream, they don't care. They want to be sharp. They want to be ready when they are called upon. And Mikey Ambrose's number was pulled for this one, and he delivered, and he was part of a clean sheet, and you can't take that away from anybody. It's a collective effort. Let's go to what Frank de Boer said about the match. He called it a mature performance. That was the perfect word, in my opinion. I thought it was a performance where, outside of the big save from Brad Kazan in the first half and a couple that would have been outstanding goals had Philadelphia been able to put something on goal or test Brad in a more meaningful way, it was a somewhat comfortable match where Philadelphia, I've seen a lot of people say that Philadelphia had control of the first half. I didn't get that sense for the whole first half. I thought they had moments of control. I didn't think they had extended periods of time of control. And the second half, especially with the change in shape and style from the Union, which you knew was coming when they started in a 4-4-2, you have to go 4-2-3-1 to bring on Ilsinho. And Ilsinho is such an impact player. You have to bring him in that moment. You know it's coming. It's still difficult to deal with. But Atlanta dealt with it really, really well. And I think what it did in a lot of ways was where Philadelphia was giving Atlanta problems was in the middle of the field with the 4-4-2 diamond. They were kind of surrounding guys like Nagbe and Lorenowitz when they'd try to build up possession, force some turnovers in the first half. When you went to the 4-2-3-1, you were matched up in the midfield. It wasn't a 4 versus 3. It was 3 versus 3. And that made it easier for Atlanta. And you saw extended periods of possession, which has been a topic all year long about side to side. Nah, they're not going anywhere, and it's just possession for possession's sake. And the same people who would call what Pep Guardiola was doing tiki-taka and blast it and all this type of stuff. Well, it had a very important purpose here. It grinded Philadelphia down into a fine powder because they didn't have the legs to run and play defense for 20, 25, 30 passes, going left to right, going up and back. They couldn't do that much longer. And that was what the game called for in that moment. That's part of that mature performance. And you did that long enough to then open up the long ball over the top from Julian Gressel to Joseph Martinez, and it's ball game.
And what you saw from Atlanta United, in addition to those 25, 30 pass chains, is you saw playoff Franco Escobar and whomever else from the back taking advantage of the space that was there, going ahead and engaging in the play, going ahead and putting themselves further up in the action. And it just seemed to me that Atlanta United was controlling a lot of the aspects of the time of play and what they were able to do with it. It was, I'm not going to use the word easy, but that was the feel. I'm not saying that the actual effort was, but it seemed very controlling. Atlanta United had their ideas in mind. And it's like, all right, we see what's in front of us. We're going to take advantage of what Philadelphia is giving us. And if that means that we're piecing all of these passes together and they're having to chase, and by the time you're getting into the 65th minute, we're wearing them down. So the maturity of taking advantage of what was in front of you, not going completely when it comes to defensively, when you're sitting there, you're seeing what's in front of you defensively, you're going, all right, I see what you're doing. And it was a lot of aspects were in control from an Atlanta United perspective, both on offense and on defense. There wasn't anything really short of a couple of moments where you were sitting there and you were worried about what Philadelphia was doing in front of you.
3 shots on goal. That's what Philadelphia was able to do here. They created 9 chances. Atlanta created 9 chances. The early goal changed the way the game played out a little bit because then Atlanta didn't have to risk as much. They were able to be a little bit safer, a little bit smarter as the day went on. And then at the end, it was grinding them down, just wearing them out and taking advantage. Great win for Atlanta United. Don't let anybody tell you that they didn't look good in this game. I'm sorry. I just disagree with that completely. I think it's a really silly thing to say, and I think people who are saying it have some agendas that I don't know why they're still pursuing this. This is a team that finished 3rd in the regular season in Major League Soccer. This is a team that is now in the Final Four of Major League Soccer's playoffs. This is a team that won the U.S. Open Cup. This is a team that beat Club America in a Campeones Cup match. This is a team that beat Monterrey. This is a team that beat Herediano at home. This is a team that has been not as good as LAFC in the regular season, but this is a team that has won 2 trophies and is in play for a 3rd and defending their title. You're past the point of being able to lean back on things that you said in March. If you're just falling back on that stuff, if you're just trying to figure out how to write something about this game and see how you can insult the manager without actually saying something that is completely reckless and foolish, I don't know what you're doing anymore. And I don't get it, and I think it's very, very sad to see because these last 2 matches, if you're not giving Frank de Boer a ton of credit for going into a postseason without a best 11 center back, and then your veteran captain who stepped in and gave you a great performance in the first game of the postseason, you lose him. You get through your first game without Miles Robinson, you change the shape and make 2 key substitutions to turn that game around. Then you come into this one and start a makeshift backline. No one had this backline in their predictions. Not one person in the United States had this backline as your backline for a playoff semifinal in the Eastern Conference. You have to give Frank de Boer a ton of credit for changes in matches, pushing the right buttons, getting performances out of so many different players to contribute to where this team is. You have to give him credit. And you can't take credit away by saying that, well, they're not playing the way he wanted them to play, and he had to compromise and give up all of that and play the way the players wanted. No, it's BS. And you can't take credit away from him by saying, well, they just have a really good team. That's BS. Frank de Boer has done an outstanding job in 2019, and there's 2 more games for Atlanta United. Toronto on Wednesday, and if they win that, they move on to MLS Cup, and they face either LAFC or Seattle. In anybody's book, worldwide, anybody's book, you take what Atlanta United has accomplished in 2019, and you are celebrating it. You are not trying to find ways to diminish it. People who are trying to sell you that line, figure out why they're trying to sell you that. Either they're trying to protect bad takes that they wrote a while back, or they just don't know what they're talking about. That's all I got. It's really foolish at this point. Atlanta United has done something that no one expected to be at this point in the season. Nobody was calling for this in March or April. I didn't think it was going to happen either because of how difficult the year was set up to be. They added to the difficulty by making an Open Cup run and winning it. The degree of difficulty has been added to by injury and just all of the craziness of a 2019 calendar year. And Atlanta United is back where they were last year in the Eastern Conference Finals. Have to give that credit. It's okay to say that, hey, I was wrong. Hey, I thought it was going to go differently. Hey, I was worried. That's okay. It's all right to do that. I saw a lot of people doing that. Don't refuse to do that and keep trying to find ways to diminish a great accomplishment. It's silliness, but hey, there's some people who have bylines on websites that, you would think would know better, but I don't know. Read it if you want, but it's very frustrating when you see this stuff because I don't think there's a team in this league who gets questioned more than Atlanta United. And no idea why that's the case. This should be a celebration of a great accomplishment, not trying to find ways to take away from it. We're going to get into all of your reactions, over, under, on par, about last night. Give us your reactions about El Tráfico as well. 5-3 pile of stupid out in California. The Galaxy cannot defend at all, and it showed. But LAFC gave up 3 goals, so we'll talk about all of that along with everything from the Benz last night. We're going to take a quick break. Tweet at us at Soccer Down Here. We'll be right back.
Looking for future leaders we can trust and believe in? Look no further than the high school student athletes right here in Georgia. High school sports teach young people how to be effective leaders. It begins by making their grades and being on time for practice. It includes learning to listen, following directions, accepting responsibility, being a good role model. And it's about respect for officials, opponents, the rules, and each other. The result? It transcends sports. It gives us hope for the future. High school sports. There's so much more than just a game. This message presented by the Georgia High School Association and the Georgia Athletic Directors Association.
Today's show is presented by Appolinsky & Associates, personal injury lawyers with over 30 years of experience, supporters of Atlanta United, Faction, and Inter-Atlanta Youth Football Club. If you've been hurt in a wreck, contact Steve today at steve@aa-legal.com or call in 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
We know that every driver is different, and a one-size policy does not fit all. That's why Country Financial offers a variety of discounts, so you get the coverage you need and the savings you deserve. From good driver to good student, multi-policy to multi-car, we've got a discount to suit every driver. Call Jason Wright at 678-568-6871 today to see what you could save. On Facebook at Jason Wright Agency or by phone at 678-568-6871. Discounts vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Country Preferred Insurance Company, or Country Casualty Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
Welcome back. Soccer Down Here, October 25th. Atlanta United headed to the Eastern Conference Final. Toronto FC coming to town next Wednesday night. Get your tickets. I believe the pre-sale, I guess, already started. Lock them down. Let people know. The public sale might be going now. I think the MLS Cup pre-sale has started as well, but there's still things that have to happen for that to fall into place. Right now, if the top seeds move on that are left, Atlanta would be going to Los Angeles for MLS Cup. Your other possibilities, if Seattle beats LAFC, Seattle would be coming to Atlanta. If Toronto beats Atlanta, they would be traveling to either winner of the Western Conference. The only way Seattle hosts is if Toronto beats Atlanta in the East and Seattle beats LAFC. Toronto cannot host MLS Cup. It's been a wild playoff setup. Very curious to see the takes about the 90-minute format now. I think there's a few clubs that are not going to be thrilled with it because of the way these games went, and I think there's others who are going to be very, very happy with it. So love to see those takes. Love to see your takes about last night. Let's get to them. Overreaction Friday starts right about now, John.
Starting from the overnight, Carlos Rangel, the goalkeeping performances by American keepers during these MLS playoffs clearly show why Brad Guzan should be number one for the hashtag USMNT.
Yeah, Brad's been outstanding. I mean, the vote on goalkeeper of the year was one of the wildest things I've seen in a while, with the player vote, the media vote, the club vote being so different. It was really surprising. Brad finishing fourth, look, there's people who get into the advanced metrics of it and talk about how many difficult shots Brad had to save and XG and conceded XG and all that type of stuff. I think a lot of what Brad gives you is not measured there strictly. He doesn't have to make as many big saves because he has a good team around him. And part of the reason that this defense is very good is because of Brad Guzan. It's a situation where, I mean, I'm not a advanced statistic hater by any stretch. I think they can be very, very useful. But I think in this game, stats don't tell you the story. Stats add to a story. Stats can point you in the right direction, but stats don't define the story. They can't, because this game's not built that way. Brad Guzan recorded his 20th clean sheet in all competitions for Atlanta United last night.
That's ridiculous.
20 out of 44, I think. That's craziness. I mean, and he's not making 7, 8, 9 saves in a match. He's not Maxime Crépeau. Maxime Crépeau would have matches where he's making 10 saves. Like, Brad's not making that in 3. But one of the reasons why he's not is how organized he keeps his back line, his communication, how well he handles his 18. His distribution is very, very good. And you can count on Brad Guzan in possession. He can open a game up with a throw, with a punt. He's got that ability. So he adds so much more than just making a bunch of saves and a bunch of difficult saves. Not winning goalkeeper of the year, I don't think Brad Guzan really cares, to be honest. I don't think it matters to him. But to finish fourth is a little weird, especially when the players, his fellow players, he won that vote. I don't know. I've said it since 2017 that he should not have just been passed over as the next in line after Tim Howard. He shouldn't have been handed it either. And he's got to continue to perform both for club and country. But I don't think it is a foregone conclusion that Brad Guzan is not the number one for the United States.
Coach Ice Trey in the overnights. So it definitely did qualify in the Overreaction Friday hashtag. He says, far from an overreaction, but that ball that P.T. Martinez played to Gressel didn't exist in MLS until the 10th minute of last night's match. It was absolutely breathtaking.
Yeah, I was screaming in Spanish after the goal about P.T. Martinez because that was ridiculous. And that's the stuff that, I'm sorry, it doesn't get enough credit. It was the same as Barco's pass to Franco Escobar in the Revolution match. It's those types of plays don't happen from every player. It's why I like a Brendan Aronson so much. I think Brendan Aronson, as a young teenager for Philadelphia, has that capability to see plays that might not be there to the obvious person, the naked eye. They're able to see some things and open some things up that aren't there. I love players that have that ability. I love the old school number 10. I love the playmaker. I love that. And P.T. Martinez did not take the simple option. He didn't just do what was expected here, I don't think anyone, including Julian Gressel, thought that was coming that way. And it was such a perfectly weighted ball that Gressel's the only one who can get there, but it's teasing enough to draw Blake off his line and give Gressel the space to do what he did in the finish. The finish is immaculate. The finish is, I'll put that one over a half volley rip from Julian Gressel any day of the week, because I think the degree of difficulty is that much higher. But the reason he has the opportunity to make that decision is just a ridiculously perfect ball from Pity Martinez. And we need to celebrate those. We need to celebrate those types of plays, because those are the plays that take a good game to great. Those are the plays that take a good player to special. And that's why Pity Martinez is such a critical part. His first touch around the defense, he pulls, with his first touch, he pulls 5 defenders to him. And when they get close enough to him, he just slips a little delicate ball into space for Julian Gressel that directs his run. Gressel is hanging back the whole way, and the ball from Pity, no look, directs Gressel to make the appropriate run, and the only person who could get there for Philadelphia was Blake, who had to come scrambling out 15 yards, and he couldn't get there. That doesn't happen by accident. That happens because Pity Martinez is that freaking good.
And Joseph Martinez, once the goal was scored, instantly turns around, points to Pity Martinez, and recognizes Pity for what happened on that play.
Yeah, it's something you see with this team a lot, because it was the same when Barco gave the ball to Escobar on the weekend. You get the reaction that appreciates the ball as well. You need those types of players, and that's why I said early this season, if Pity Martinez had been playing at this level all year long, and he wasn't, he was not. It took him a while. It took him a long while. But the criticism revolving around his defense was an absolute red herring. He's not here for that. When he gives you defense, it's great. And he had a huge defensive play last night. One that didn't get enough credit. I know we talked about it a lot on the radio broadcast, but forced Marco Fabian to take an extra touch into a weaker shot because of a long run from Pity defensively. But he's not here to do that. It doesn't mean he's not supposed to do that. It doesn't mean he's not expected to do that. Understand this. Pity Martinez is here for the ball he gave to Julian Gressel. He is here for that audacious talent. He's not here to hustle. You have players who can hustle. Anybody can hustle. And it's not to knock people who hustle. It's saying that you can put your head down, you can put in that work, and you can hustle. There's not many players who can give you what Pity Martinez gave you last night with that ball. You need those players. And you need to understand their role and not get hung up on he's not tracking back. That's not what made him a special player. That ball. That's what makes him a special player. And you don't get the opening goal without Pity Martinez.
And I'm guessing, since it's not listed as such, but I'm guessing El Parcero Danny used sarcasm font when he put in to the timeline. Who would have thought Pity was able to create such a pass?
Yes, that is heavy sarcasm font. Pity was great last night. Pity and Barco both were just great last night. Barco had a chip into Joseph that was just stupid in quality. Yeah, just absolutely stupid in quality. Pulls it back, chips it in with the left foot into a dink to Joseph. Joseph played it to Escobar, who had a great save from Blake, and an LGP with a follow-up header forced an even better save from Blake. It was in the 75th minute, if you want to go back and look at the run back from Pity Martinez to force Fabian to pull it back and not take the first-time shot. Right at the end of the 75th minute, if you want to go back and look at that one to make sure that you see that it happens, that Pity Martinez can defend, yes.
Tiki Taka at ATOUTD 24_7. A couple of overreactions. One, did anyone else think that Pogba should have been called for a penalty in the 86th?
No, I don't think so. There were a couple where Philly was looking for one, and I'm trying to remember that one specifically. I'd have to go back.
Is that
and
one?
look
Is
at
that the one
broadcast.
with the do-si-do on the near side where basically Pogba's
They were
having
not
to
square
run a
dancing,
circle?
no. There was no square dancing. I don't remember the square dancing call. Sorry.
But no, it was the one. I think it was the one where it was trying to chase around in a circle, and it was somewhat similar to Lorea and Matarrita from.
Oh no, it was not anywhere near similar to that. No. That one, Matarrita leaves the ground and goes in recklessly. Pogba, if it's the one I'm thinking of, didn't leave the ground.
No.
Or didn't leave his feet. Sorry, he just. I think it's the one where Fafa Pico is coming around with speed and just couldn't keep his balance as he's turning and kind of falls/runs into Pogba.
Yeah.
I didn't think there was anything in the way of a trip, but I'd have to go back and look at it. I don't remember much outcry about it either. So
No. And then other than the goal, Joseph had a really off night, and Gressel with another man of the match performance.
Gressel was really, really good. Really good, and it was kind of interesting to see because I worried at times about his pace. I thought at times he was in a somewhat difficult spot for him, dealing with players who could outrun him. But the thing about Gressel that I'm noticing more and more is early in games like this one where physically I get concerned. I feel like there might be a mismatch or whatever. He's able to adjust and find a way to impact the game. Now, the ball from Pity put him into the right run. He also hung back in the right way. I mean, he didn't just make a blind run, just putting his head down and running towards the 18. He hung back looking for something because his team's really good about that, and then it's an outstanding finish. But as the night went on, he got better defensively. He tucked inside a little bit more, created space for Franco Escobar. He really added in a bunch of different ways. The assist, I mean, it's a great ball over the top, and it's the point in the game where Atlanta had just shifted to 5 in the back. You're definitely not trying to risk very much, and he gets his head up and sees Joseph Martinez has a 1v1 if Gressel can put it over Elliott. It's Martinez and McKenzie, and Gressel hits a perfect 50, 60-yard ball. About 60 yards looking at it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's a talent in and of itself as well. I thought Gressel was really, really good. There were a bunch of different men of the match last night. We gave it to Pity Martinez. The who scored ratings, it's not always what I agree with, but more often than not, I think it's a pretty good barometer. Their top-rated player was Pity as well. Gressel was a big, big part of it. Joseph, he left some goals on the table. And hey, it happens. It's the life of a striker. Like, that's the thing that you got to realize. I guess the closest comparison would be the top wide receiver who you have to always think you're open. You have to always think that you're going to score a touchdown every play. It's just part of the life of being that receiver. I guess the life of a closer in baseball as well, where you have to expect you're going to strike out the side every single time you come in. And when you have a bad night at the office, you got to brush it off and be ready to do it again.
Short-term memory.
Yeah, I mean, that's the life of it because there's no way you can score with every chance that you get. It's not going to happen. Pelé never did it. Maradona never did it. Ronaldo never did it. Messi doesn't do it. I mean, you can keep going through the list. It's just impossible. So you have to stay locked in, and you have to stay in a frame of mind where you can contribute. And Joseph did that. I mean, he gets ridiculous goal. I mean, it's just a rocket into the upper 90 that beats Blake at the near side. And it's not even a bad goal for Blake to give up because of the quality of the shot. And this was after Joseph had missed 2 or 3 that I was surprised he missed. But you've got to just maintain that swagger and maintain that attitude of, give me the ball, I'm going to score. Keep giving me the ball, I am going to score. And Joseph always has that.
And we have plenty of over, under, and on pars this morning. Michael had, wow, 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 and he only used a period. Frank once again pulls the right card. The lineup had me asking questions. PT, Mikey, and Pogba answered. What a great match by PT and Mikey. Big shout out to Ambrose for being willing to play for the twos and be ready to play in the big time.
Yeah, that's a huge, huge part of it. And Stephen Glass talked about that with us in the pregame. Both Pogba and Ambrose at different times requested to play for the twos. Not even just they were told, hey, you're not going to be in the 18 this weekend. We want you to play for Atlanta United too. It was, hey, you're not going to be in the 18 this weekend. The twos are playing. Do you want to play? And both of them many times said, yes, I want to go play. And you look at some of the lineups. I mean, there were times when both of them were surrounded by teenagers on the field, and you've got to try to stay sharp and worry about your game while being a leader and being an organizer and making sure that the players around you are doing what they need to do. I mean, I look back at the Charleston match from September 18th. And Mikey Ambrose played as a left center back in a 3-5-2. And in the middle, it was George Campbell. And to the outside, it was George Bello. I mean, 2 17-year-olds on either side of Mikey Ambrose. He's got to worry about his game and continuing to stay sharp and display the qualities to Frank de Boer to say, hey, I want to be part of the first team. But he's also got to be a mentor to 2 teenagers on either side of him and make sure that they're positioned right and make sure that their development is occurring the right way. You know, I mean, that's the sign, as Glassy said, that's the sign of a true professional. It's not something that every player would do. You go back to the game on June 22nd where Florentine Pogba requested to go to Indianapolis and play against a team in Indy 11 that's a difficult team to play against, a place at the RCA or Lucas Oil Stadium where it's not the greatest facility in the world for soccer. And yeah, by the way, his 2 brothers were in town, and Paul's kind of a big deal, and it's not like you get to see these guys all the time with all of them playing in different parts of the world. And if Flo wanted to stay in Atlanta that weekend and go wherever he wanted to go in Atlanta, he could have done that. He could have done that. The first team wasn't playing that weekend, by the way. Remember, that was at the end of the international break where the first team picked it back up on the Wednesday in Toronto after this. Pogba went to Indianapolis. I mean, that's why those guys were able to contribute in this. And it says a lot about the attitude at the club, and it says a lot about the environment that Stephen Glass has created with Atlanta United too. And man, there was a lot of criticism of Atlanta United too this season as well. Well, you don't win last night if you don't have Atlanta United too. 100%, because Pogba would not have been molded into the player that he's turned into, because he showed up having not played competitive matches in about 10 months.
Yeah.
9-10 months. And I mean, we saw him at the beginning of the 2 season. He couldn't get past 45 minutes.
Nope.
He just didn't have the legs. And it's understandable. But he played his way into better shape, into a rhythm, into fitness. And he's got such a great personality while doing it that it was that Indianapolis trip that I think turned a lot of heads. And It's something that Frank DeBoer has mentioned multiple times. So you get that. You create an atmosphere both at the club about wanting to be able to contribute, wanting to be the best, and also with the twos of come in, you're going to be respected. You're not going to be treated like somebody, stepping down a level. You're going to be treated as a professional because Stephen Glass has been there and done that, and he understands all elements of that journey for a professional player. And he puts Pogba, Ambrose, other first-team players who play for Atlanta United too in positions to, 1, be comfortable, 2, be leaders, and 3, hone their game, stay sharp, and stay ready. It's a gigantic element of this success. And you don't win last night without Atlanta United too. You didn't win MLS Cup last year without Atlanta United too either, because you had players who contributed along the way. Mikey was one who stayed sharp with Atlanta United 2 last year. Miles Robinson stepped into a postseason game last year because he played a lot for the Twos at the beginning of the season. It's critical. It's a critical part of the club's development. And last night, the left side of your back line really benefited from the USL Championship and Atlanta United 2 this season.
Jordan Myers, along those same lines, I think one of the most impressive things about Atlanta's performance last night was the communication of the back line. If you didn't know Atlanta United, I don't think you would know we were shorthanded. #Overreaction Friday.
Yeah, we talked to Mikey Ambrose about that. He joined us on the Full-Time Report, which if you want to check that out, the podcast should be available on your podcatchers under the Off the Woodwork folder from 92.9 The Game. You can also go back on radio.com, the rewind function. I think it goes back 24 hours. And you can go back and listen to the Full-Time Report from last night. Mikey talked about the communication, and he said that he's really good friends with Pogba, and they've really linked up and are on the same page. On the other side of the back line, Escobar and LGP, same. Very close. They're good friends. They're on the same wavelength. All of them are on the same wavelength, and you saw so many times, whether it was Brad from behind, Lorenowitz in front, or the back line themselves, stay organized. When Escobar would bomb forward, as we know he likes to do, Gressel would drop in as the right back. We saw Nagby drop in as a right back occasionally. Saw Remedi drop in as a right back late in the match when he came on. It was a situation where you saw so much interchange due to what the match called for, because this team gets it. They understood their roles in a shape that they had not started in an MLS match since Seattle. They understood the roles. They knew exactly what the instructions were. They knew exactly what the job entailed. And if one person needed to move into a different spot on the field, he was covered. And Mikey mentioned that in our interview, that he always felt like guys had his back. He felt like he could play. It wasn't like he was scared about stepping up, worried that if somebody would have his back. He knew that Pogba had his back. He knew that he could step out and challenge Ilsinho on the dribble a little bit more because he had cover. Huge element of this. And for a group that is a makeshift group to begin with, to be that organized, it generally doesn't happen. And it's a credit to the players, and it's a credit to the coaching staff and the instructions that the players were given. It's something that is not easy to accomplish, and Atlanta United did it last night. Let's take a break, come back, finish up hour number 1. Mike Conti will join us at 10 o'clock for his thoughts on an Overreaction Friday. We'll be right back after this.
A ranger station.
I'd like to report a bear hug.
Okay.
I put out my campfire and Smokey Bear hugged me.
So you drowned the fire, you stirred it, drowned it again, and felt that it was cold?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, he's just letting you know you did good.
Bear hug from Smokey Bear. Status update.
I'm gonna let you go now. There are many ways to start a fire, but one sure way to put it out. Learn how you can do your part at SmokeyBear.com.
Sponsored by the U.S. Forest Service, Ad Council, and your state forester.
As a business owner, you know that every year brings new challenges and opportunities. The success of your business demands expertise and focus. And Country Financial can help you keep that focus by helping ensure you have the right insurance protection in place to meet your goals. Jason Wright can help you create a customized insurance plan that has coverages designed just for your business. Give Jason a call at 678-568-6871 or reach him on Facebook at Jason Wright Agency. Coverages vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
This is what matters. This is beyond X's and O's. This is the difference mutual respect makes. This is what character looks like. This is what defines us in Georgia. This is sportsmanship. School sports. It's not the outcome that matters most, but the way the games are played. This message presented by the Georgia High School Association and the Georgia Athletic Directors Association.
If you've been hurt in a car wreck, contact my friend Steve Apolinsky of Apolinsky and Associates. He's been representing individuals for over 30 years throughout Georgia and Alabama. Email him at steve@aa-legal.com or call him 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
Welcome back. Wrapping up hour number 1. Soccer Down here, October 25th. Atlanta United preparing for the Eastern Conference Final next week against Toronto. Seattle preparing for a trip to Los Angeles, and they know which side of Los Angeles they're going to now. They're headed to Bank of California Stadium to face LAFC. Stupid, bonkers, crazy 5-3 Western Conference semifinal between the Galaxy and LAFC. I mean, I guess it probably could have been 8-7. It was that kind of match. It made no sense at all, but it was a wild, wild spectacle.
It was definitely the spectacle. And I know a lot of folks were looking at one of, I think it was the second LAFC goal and trying to figure out how many LAFC players may have been offside, and it wasn't called. And
it was a little strange.
Yeah. And then it gets to 2-0, then 2-1. That's your half. And then in the 56th, Galaxy are gifted their second goal. And then it was 2 goals in 3 minutes, 2 goals in 4 minutes, made it 4-2. Then it's stupid with 9 O's. That was what that match was last night.
I caught the tail end of it. Just a couple really cool things about the night. It was a long night at the stadium. It was a long day at the stadium. 100% worth it. It was great. On the way out, I'm walking towards – Jarrett was taking Marta. I'm walking towards the Gulch, and the Galaxy pulled it back to 2-2. And I'm like, I got to go pull the game up on ESPN. I got to go. And I'm trying to walk away from Jarrett in mid-sentence. So this is ridiculous. I got to go.
I was listening to Denholm, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm walking down the ramp into the Gulch. I always walk down the ramp there, which you're not supposed to do, but it's the end of the night and there's nobody driving down the ramp, so it's all good. I like to take risks, I guess. So I'm walking down the ramp and I can hear the ESPN call as I'm walking down into the Gulch, and by this point most of the Gulch is cleared out, but there are 3 separate post-game tailgates with the LA match on, with fairly large groups of people standing around watching this match at 11 whatever, midnight whatever, in a parking lot in downtown Atlanta, watching a soccer match from the other side of the country because they're hoping that one team beats the other one so Atlanta can host MLS Cup. Craziness that this is happening. So then I get in the car and I'm driving back home, and I'm listening to the call on Sirius XM FC and Dave Denholm, who does an amazing job on the matches with LAFC solo. I tweeted it. I stopped at the gas station to grab a snack because I was still wired from this and wired from El Trafico's madness. I tweeted it that Denholm was so into it and just going crazy during this game because it was crazy. You had to go crazy. It was a crazy game. Denholm, it felt like you were sitting right next to him. I mean, the way it sounded on the radio was amazing. Felt like you're sitting right next to him, and every big play, it felt like he's smacking you on the back because he was so animated. I loved it. I thought it was outstanding. I didn't want to get out of the car. I sat in the car and listened to the end of the game because it was so compelling. I mean, Dave was amazing, and that's what I love about this league. You get these kind of crazy moments. I did not see until I got home Zlatan Ibrahimovic displaying his great first touch, walking off the field. That was something. I did see some comments from Zlatan that I think were absolutely embarrassing and very disappointing to see about a league that has paid you a lot of money over the last 2 years. But I mean, I'm not really surprised. It's incredibly disrespectful. And if Zlatan's back with the LA Galaxy next year, I'll be shocked. And he's probably going to say a lot of ridiculous things that a lot of people are going to believe because he's Zlatan Ibrahimovic. But he's also said a lot of ridiculous things about a manager like Pep Guardiola, who is one of the best in the world. So take what he says with a grain of salt. I was also very shocked to see the exchange on ESPN that sounded like this between Sebastian Salazar and Bob Bradley.
People have asked questions about Carlos Vela in big games. What can you say about his performance this evening?
Who asked those questions?
Over the course of his career, those questions have been asked.
Have they been asked this year?
How many big games have you had this year?
That question.
I think it's a fair question. His performance tonight.
After this season, get lost. Get lost.
Thank you, Bob.
A spiky
Guys,
performance.
back up to you.
Yes, a spiky performance from Bob Bradley and a backward stare as well.
Yeah, and he glared at him as he was walking away, and that's a little much. So Sebastian Salazar dropped the receipts at about 4:28 in the morning, East Coast time. I'm sure Sebi was still pretty riled up after all of this. He shared a tweet from January 14th. Said, most intrigued by Bob Bradley's comments on Carlos Vela. Bradley seems to want more out of Vela, especially in biggest games. And this was from an interview with Bob Bradley, where Bob Bradley said, I think Carlos can still be better. He's an incredible talent. He's a great guy. But his ability to make a difference in the biggest games, when you're that kind of attacking player, then you've got to find a way when other teams are strategizing how to make it difficult. You've got to have ways to still come through. I still think there's a lot more that we can do to help him improve. That was January. It was pretty shocking to see Bradley react that way after that game. I think Bob Bradley was treated horribly by U.S. Soccer in firing him after the Gold Cup final in 2011. I think he was treated even worse by Swansea. Yep. That was a joke of a situation. Yep. You gave him the impression that he was going to have a transfer window to add players. He managed the team not to just grind out results, but to build something, and then you ripped the rug out from under him. I understand he has a chip on his shoulder. I get it. I totally understand why, but that's a completely fair question from Sebastian Salazar, and the response was completely unnecessary.
Yeah, and the fact that Sebi dropped the receipt, that to me just, it's like, yeah, there you go. And the fact that
a topic that Bob brought up at the beginning of the season,
yeah,
so it's
exactly. Valid. Yeah, absolutely. And so you brought it up yourself, and now that you get asked about it, you're like, you go off on a huff and give a glare. That's on you, sir.
Yeah, that's a little ridiculous. We're going to take a break, come back, talk about a little about El Tráfico, see if Mike Conti got a chance to catch most of that. We'll also talk about Atlanta and their win over Philadelphia and the upcoming Eastern Conference final with Toronto. Be right back after this.
Looking for future leaders we can trust and believe in? Look no further than the high school student athletes right here in Georgia. High school sports teach young people how to be effective leaders. It begins by making their grades and being on time for practice. It includes learning to listen, following directions, accepting responsibility, being a good role model. And it's about respect for officials, opponents, the rules, and each other. The result? It transcends sports. It gives us hope for the future. High school sports. There's so much more than just a game. This message presented by the Georgia High School Association and the Georgia Athletic Directors Association.
Today's show is presented by Appolinsky & Associates, personal injury lawyers with over 30 years of experience, supporters of Atlanta United, Faction, and Inter-Atlanta Youth Football Club. If you've been hurt in a wreck, contact Steve today at steve@aa-legal.com or call in 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
We know that every driver is different, and a one-size policy does not fit all. That's why Country Financial offers a variety of discounts, so you get the coverage you need and the savings you deserve. From good driver to good student, multi-policy to multi-car, we've got a discount to suit every driver. Call Jason Wright at 678-568-6871 today to see what you could save. On Facebook at Jason Wright Agency or by phone at 678-568-6871. Discounts vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Country Preferred Insurance Company, or Country Casualty Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
You're listening to Soccer Down Here daily on SDH Networks, a division of OSG Sports. Find us at Soccer Down Here on Facebook and Twitter. The time is now the top of the hour. Peep, y'all.
Welcome back. Soccer Down Here, October 25th. Atlanta United preparing for a second straight Eastern Conference final. Toronto coming to town on Wednesday. Tickets are available, so snatch those up, because this should be quite a night at Mercedes-Benz Stadium on Wednesday of next week. Mike Conti joins us now. How's your voice after last night's madness?
I'm great. Those Victory Coke Zeros that John hooked me up with, very, very sweet. Got the vocal cords lubricated, and I got a solid 4.5 hours of sleep. It's hard to turn your brain off after a night like that, isn't it? But
yeah.
Let me just start by saying again, if you missed the full-time report, I'm just so proud of this team. I'm really just enormously proud of what they've accomplished. And I really hope people aren't taking this for granted. Back-to-back conference final appearances. That's something we haven't really seen much in the city of Atlanta outside of that Braves run in the 1990s. So I really hope we aren't taking this for granted. But what a performance by guys like Pity Martinez and Mikey Ambrose, both of whom had not yet started a playoff game. Mikey hadn't started a game with the first team since July. Pogba getting his first start in a while. Just top to bottom, managerially, as far as the players executing, everything. One of the better performances all year for Atlanta United, and quite frankly, I think as good as they've played in a 90-minute complete performance since that 2-0 dismantling of Portland back in August.
And obviously, Mike, we've had a lot of folks chiming in this morning, and I'm just going to go ahead and say with at Robbie Friedman says, "Oh, ye of little faith, safe to say that FDB knows what he's doing."
Yeah, I thought he knew what he was doing back in March when things weren't going well. People were just very, very impatient. And I let this be a lesson going forward to the DeBoer out crowd, to maybe not quite be so knee-jerk. If you want to be knee-jerk and be like a Crystal Palace fan, go ahead. But, I'll take what Atlanta United is doing over what Crystal Palace is doing right now, where they are. Look, it's hard when you take over a team and you leap right into training camp. I mean, there's no real assimilation period. He's hired right before Christmas. He gets here right after New Year's, and within days you're starting a training camp. You're not going to have a very good feel for your team and your players when you're ramping up so quickly. And then you have the burden of CONCACAF Champions League on top of it, where you have to play meaningful fixtures so quickly. And we knew it would take a while for Frank to really get a feel for this team, but boy, does he have it now. And, again, last night, an example where he nailed the subs. I mean, I feel like we're a broken record now when we talk about how he has nailed the subs game after game after game. And the lineup he put out last night was panned by many and seemed to be controversial by others, and it worked. You know why it worked? Because Frank knows his personnel. It's hard to imagine, but maybe Frank, who gets to see these guys training every day and is spending hours upon hours with these guys every day, may have a better feel for his team and a better feel for where to go with the selection
than people who are watching it from the outside. So, I don't think Frank needed to be vindicated. I think he's had a terrific year. I think he was wrongly omitted from Coach of the Year voting, but I do understand how that all works. And I'm not saying that Bob Bradley wasn't deserving, but it's interesting. The runner-up in the Coach of the Year voting is going to be out. And here's Frank DeBoer, who's now in the Final Four, and is really looking at putting his stamp on something extremely special for this club.
Is it kind of crazy to you that just kind of taking the pulse of the commentary about this one, it feels like most people are looking at Atlanta as the worst team of the four that are left?
How?
It's a good. I don't know how either.
I don't understand what
it's the vibe I get.
I don't understand what people are watching. I just don't understand. And I think part of it, and I did not watch the ESPN broadcast last night, but it sounds like, based on my Twitter timeline, that Healy and Moreno were very, very negative towards Atlanta United last night. Very negative. And sometimes in a national TV game, it's the Chris Collinsworth axiom. Mm-hmm. When a color commentator really gets going, that can help to shape the narrative big time for neutral fans. With all due respect to Toronto, and I'm worried about playing them on Wednesday, Toronto capitalized on two New York City mistakes to win that game at Citi Field on Wednesday. They didn't outplay New York City. They were good against D.C., but they still had to go to extra time to put that away. Seattle couldn't hold a lead against Dallas. They were solid against RSL, not spectacular. LAFC, I'm telling you, I want to play those guys. I would love to get a crack at those guys after the defending I saw last night. So, I know people get excited when they see 5 goals and they think, wow, that's really exciting, compelling, action-packed soccer. And yeah, a 5-goal game is going to win you a game, but a clean sheet's going to win you a cup. And that's why I think Atlanta and Seattle might be a little bit better positioned right now to do this than LAFC and or Toronto. And Toronto is kind of the outlier that I'm still trying to figure out. But it's just because Atlanta United's not scoring a ton of goals doesn't mean they aren't playing well. Quite frankly, Joseph had one of his worst finishing nights of the season, and Atlanta United still won 2-0. Joseph could have easily had a hat trick last night if he's finishing those chances. So I don't know why we always feel like we have to apologize after an Atlanta United win. Well, I'm sorry. I'm sorry the Philadelphia Union, they have to play 120 on Sunday. I'm sorry they were out of gas. I'm sorry Alejandro Bedoya was hurting. And let's praise them for their courage. We're sorry we won. We're sorry. New England,
Atlanta United has talent. That's right. The one that blows my mind.
Exactly. New England, great season. Bruce Arena really got them turned around. What a great story up in Foxborough. We're so sorry we had to end that season. Sorry. Stop apologizing. There should be no need to feel like you have to apologize for being a better team. Atlanta United was a better team than Philadelphia. They were a better team than New England. They're in the last 4 in this league this year because they were better than at least 20 other teams in this league. That's not something to apologize for. Look, Andrew Wiebe, I have a lot of respect for him, and I tweeted last night that I thought Atlanta United was unequivocally better, and he kind of clapped back at that a little bit and thought they were more talented, but not necessarily better. Isn't that the same thing? What's the difference?
Being talented is not a negative. That's the thing, is he's trying to say that they weren't better, they were just better players. And one, you have to give credit for putting together the roster that is that talented. And also, no, you're incorrect. They were the better team last night. They scored an early goal. Don't give me a bunch of stats to tell me that the teams were even when Atlanta scored in the 10th minute. Scoring in the 10th minute changes the game. You had a lead. You're going to play differently. It wasn't a 0-0 game until the 80th minute. It was 1-0 10 minutes in. So that changes the way the stats turn out. Game state is a huge element. So
it's like people freaking out over Philadelphia having 31 shots on Sunday against Red Bulls. And wow, Philadelphia, that they could have beaten Red Bulls 8-1, and they were just so much better than Red Bulls. But game flow matters.
Mm-hmm.
They were down 3-1 at halftime. Yes, they're going to have 31 shots when the play is all in the Red Bulls' end. Yes, that is going to happen. Game flow does matter. Again, I think sometimes the national TV commentators have a really big role, maybe an unaccountably big role, in shaping the narrative for something like that. And it sounds like Moreno was just killing Atlanta United last night. I just did not see the game the same way. I just didn't. I thought that was, as far as a complete performance is concerned, both defending and attacking, that's as well as Atlanta United has played since they were in Portland, and that was more than 2 months ago. So I will gladly ride that performance into Wednesday night, I with no apologies whatsoever.
In hour number one, Mike, we played the soundbite from FDB in the post-match presser where he talked about it being a mature performance. And over the course of a season, that kind of a performance can take many forms. Sometimes every shot goes in the net and you play, FIFA 20 and you put a big number up on the board. Sometimes it's like last night. And I think that today sometimes folks get lost in the shiny object, and just because you're not blowing people out doesn't mean that you're not doing things that you're supposed to do in a certain situation, in a certain game state, to get a result like last night.
Yeah, and John, great point. Let's talk about maturity for a second. In the very first minute of the game, Leandro commits a foul that in the regular season may have been a borderline yellow. I think it would have been harsh, but I've seen refs throw yellows for that. Elfath goes over to Leandro, has a word. Now, remember that Leandro is playing on that tightrope, and Leandro was not rash in any more of his challenges the rest of the way. Jeff Lorenowitz reportedly went to Elfath at some point, either before or during the match, to kind of just remind him about the yellow card situation. I mean, those are little things that show a lot of savvy and a lot of maturity. And I thought Leandro in particular really, really stood out there. Where Leandro's engine can run really, really hot if it's unchecked, and he gets that foul in the first minute, and he's basically now playing on a light yellow card, between yellow and red is orange. I don't know what's between white and yellow. Maybe pale yellow. I don't know.
Like a lineman.
But he's kind of playing under admonishment for 92 minutes, and we didn't see him do anything foolish or rash. That's maturity. And that's a sign of a player and a team that's been through this before, and that's why I'm a little bit concerned about this challenge coming up with Toronto, who has 12 players that have won an MLS Cup coming into Atlanta on Wednesday night. You've got the last two Cup champions going at it for a chance to play for it in 2019, which is amazing for the league, and we can get into that later. But, Philadelphia looked like an out-of-gas team last night that had not really been on this stage before. It's not going to be the same Wednesday night against Toronto. But Atlanta United capitalized on that. They capitalized on it because they are a very mature club.
Well, let's get into the big picture for next week. It's LAFC in Seattle. It's Atlanta and Toronto. I mean, outside of, I guess, maybe one of the New York teams being involved, although the national TV ratings haven't been great for the New York teams, this is about as good as it gets for Major League Soccer, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and I want to push back on the national TV stuff. I saw the World Soccer Talk article. This is what happens when you schedule matches against college football in the NFL. The MLS has got to look at this. Why are we allergic to playing Friday night games? I do not understand this outright, oh, no, we can't play on Fridays type deal. Play on Fridays. Play on Fridays. There's nothing else on TV. Give your supporters a chance to have a nice long weekend for those attending matches. Play on Fridays. Please fix this for next year. All that said. Okay. You have four clubs. You have four clubs here, and I tweeted last night, they are not here by accident. Okay. You've got the 2018 champions, the 2017 champions, Toronto, 2016 champions, Seattle. And you have a team that just, in its second year, completed the best 2-year run as far as points earned in league history. This is a great thing for the league because it sends a message that if you want to play in the last four, you're going to have to be ambitious and go out and spend money and be smart about how you construct your clubs. And then on top of it, you've got 4 teams that have tremendous following in their local markets. 4 of the attendance leaders. LAFC made their stadium too small. They could probably easily get 30,000 a game at the bank if they made their stadium large enough. I mean, so many things are being validated about why owners in this league need to be ambitious, because what you have seen in the last 4 this year, these clubs have not made it by accident. I think LAFC Seattle is going to be very, very interesting, because Brian Schmetzer can manage a game into a pulp, and I'm sure that is what he will attempt to do on Tuesday night. The way that LAFC some of their defending last night was childish. LAFC is a team that I think has some weaknesses, major weaknesses that can be exposed. I just don't know if Seattle is the team that can expose those weaknesses, but I think they can frustrate them. This is a case, like, I don't like it in a regular season game when you're following the World Cup final on national TV, but in a playoff game, yeah, okay, you want to play negative and delay throw-ins and take dives and try to take the air out of the ball. That's a strategy that I can support if you're trying to get to a cup final. And I think that's what Seattle will attempt to do, and it's going to frustrate LAFC. Keep in mind, too, these teams have not played since April, which is really unusual, right? They had that weird sequence where they played back-to-back weekends, and LAFC beat them 4-1 in LA, but then the next weekend they went up to Seattle and played to a 1-1 draw, much more of a grinding-type game. So they haven't seen each other in a while. There is some familiarity there, but they haven't played against each other in a long time. I think it's fascinating, and I think Seattle's going to have a puncher's chance. I wish they had Chad Marshall. And, yeah, I'm rooting for Seattle because I want Atlanta United to host the MLS Cup final. I mean, I don't want anyone to get this twisted. I'm trying to look at this objectively, but, deep down they want Seattle to win. As far as the East final goes, I mean, we're going to have a lot to talk about over the next week, but I think in general, my concern is that Toronto has gotten to this point without Josie Altidore, who sounds like he really, really, really wants to play. I don't know if physically he can play, but every day that creeps closer to Wednesday, he's getting one day closer to coming back. I did not get the impression last night that Miles Robinson is that close yet to coming back on Wednesday. We don't know for sure. It sounds like the door could be open for the Cup final. But I wasn't told anything directly about his status, but I didn't walk out of that building last night thinking that we're going to see Miles Robinson on Wednesday. So are you going to go back to this 4-2-3-1 that worked out okay last night with Ambrose and Pogba on the left? I thought it worked okay.
It's a very different challenge with Toronto, with Pozuelo playing more as a false 9, and it's something Atlanta hasn't seen in a while.
Exactly. So is that something you want to try on Wednesday, or do you talk about maybe going back to the 3-5-2 or deploying a completely different shape? And you don't have a whole lot of time to figure that out. You have 5 days. I mean, it's not an enormously quick turnaround, but, it's not 2.5 weeks either. So I think this will be Atlanta United's toughest playoff challenge really ever in club history. To be totally honest with you, I think this will be the toughest challenge they have faced in the history of the club in the playoffs, and that includes Red Bulls last year. Because
it's one game.
It's one game, and you're playing against a team that's done it. Whereas Red Bulls, they had not done it. And they had been so star-crossed in their playoff history going into that series last year. And talk to New York City about what 1 or 2 major mistakes will do to your season against Toronto, because Toronto will capitalize on every single one of your mistakes. Philadelphia wasn't good enough to capitalize on the few Atlanta mistakes that they made last night.
A lot of times, Mike, this season we've talked about the Differente and Pity Martinez. And a lot of folks in our timeline this morning are talking about what Pity did last night. They're talking about the pass to Gressel, and one of the moments that we talked about with PT last night was him screaming back on defense.
Biggest play of the night.
Yeah.
Biggest play of the night to come back. And you're right. Screaming is a very, very, very good adverb. Just sprinting back to at least interrupt Marco Fabian and make him take an extra touch when he was pretty much alone at the top of the 18, and it's a 1-0 match at that point. So I credit Pitti for denying a chance at an equalizer, and if Philly equalizes, then all bets are off. I thought that was one of the most significant plays of the entire match. And I really hope those that have criticized Pitti's, to use air quotes, lack of interest in defense, which I don't think has been a fair narrative this year in the first place, I hope they took note of that play, because that's not the first time Pity Martinez has done that this year. It's not the first time. You're on a bigger stage now with brighter lights and more people are going to notice, but that was nothing new for us. Huge play. Total professionalism by Pity. No one's talking about team dinners anymore, are they?
I don't think so. I don't think they're taking a roll call at dinner anymore. Oh, man. What'd you think of El Tráfico last night and all the madness, and especially the madness after the match? I mean, we talked about the Bob Bradley, Sebastian Salazar, contentious little bit of commentary, but Zlatan had some things to say, wondering if the VAR was having a coffee with Magic Johnson instead of watching the game. And then made a very disparaging remark about the league.
Yeah, I don't even want to dignify the latter with a response. I mean, Zlatan's playing in MLS. So, and Zlatan has, a total of 1 playoff win in 2 years in MLS. So if the league is that bad, play better. You know, here's the thing about VAR, and we've seen it from our side in this stadium too. The camera angles at Bank of California have not been very good in helping the VAR deal with offside. And I don't really think there's anything you can do about that other than move the cameras higher, but then you're probably going to take seats out to do that. I don't think the team or the league would want to do that. It's an unfortunate thing, and the AR needs to be better. I think that's the big thing in all of this. Like, just because VAR failed in doing the right thing doesn't absolve the AR for getting it wrong. And the second goal was not close. Okay. I understand that offside is for an AR is maybe the toughest call for any official in any major sport. That's a very, very tough call. It was not close. So the AR bears some responsibility too, but you know, it's going to lead to a discussion, and maybe it's a good thing that Zlatan was victimized in this because the league seems to care a lot about what he thinks. It's going to lead to a discussion about maybe some better offside technology or you know, improving VAR in such a way where the offside call becomes a little bit easier. I do think Zlatan was right last night in condemning that. And that second goal, that's a big, big goal. I mean, Galaxy did come back to equalize and get it to 2-2, but that's a really, really big goal. And Atlanta United got burned twice out there on goals that may or may not have been offside. We don't know because we didn't see a conclusive angle, because such angles are not available in that stadium. So complicated situation. I agree with Zlatan on that, but I don't really know what the solution is other than the ARs have got to be a little more courageous.
So, you know, we look at El Tráfico and you sit there and you're like, all right, fine. But this is you talk about this being the toughest test for Atlanta United. And I know a lot of folks are sitting there saying, yeah, I want whoever's out of the West, but you got to take care of this one first.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. I would love, I mean, look, I would love to be sitting here this morning and pounding my chest about how I think LAFC is beatable and I'd love to get another crack at them. But that would do an injustice to what's coming up on Wednesday, because this is going to be so difficult for Atlanta United on Wednesday, especially if you don't have Miles and or Parkey back. And I'm not sure you're going to. The one thing that I liked to hear last night, talking to some team personnel, because I got a little superstitious after Toronto beat New York City, that, oh boy, I mean, things are really kind of falling into place in an odd way that we aren't accustomed to very much here in Atlanta sports. And the one thing that I really like to hear, and we heard it from a couple different people from within the team, is just how focused the team was all week and how locked in they were after Toronto won last night, or 2 nights ago going into the match last night, just that focus, that determination, that's a great, great sign to me. And I that's something that gives me optimism for Wednesday, because you're going to need to have that same level of focus. And yeah, Toronto ended up 4th in the East, but they're a good enough team, and they have been good enough over the last 3 months to be right there with anyone else in the league. They have not lost in their last 12. Yes, they've played to a lot of draws, but they have not lost. That's a winning team with a lot of champions. So it's going to require a similar level of focus for Atlanta United Wednesday night, and I'm confident that they're going to have it.
When we started the postseason, I thought there were 7 of the 14 that had a legitimate shot to win MLS Cup, and the 4 that are left are 4 that were part of that 7 to me. I thought Seattle and Toronto had questions about it, about health, and Toronto still has the same questions about health when it comes to Josie Altidore and Omar Gonzalez. Seattle has a different question now. Nico Lodero's healthy, but Roman Torres left the match against Salt Lake with a hamstring. I mean, Atlanta and LAFC are the favorites. They should be the favorites. They're at home, but either one could lose. It feels very even going into these conference finals.
Exactly, and you're not going to have a fluke champion either. You're not going to have a fluke champion. I mean, any one of these 4 teams is championship quality and championship caliber. By the way, is Seattle locked into CONCACAF now?
Yes, they are.
Yes, they got the last one.
Because of what happened last night, correct?
Because of what happened last night.
I guess even before last night, because they had more points than Philadelphia, and Toronto can't go. So, yeah, it would have to be them, right? So Seattle.
Yeah, it became official last night with the results. Okay. But yes, because now the placement gets a little weird, and it does come into play with how the groups fall out to draw the matchups for Champions League. If you win MLS Cup, you go into a higher spot. So if Seattle, for example, wins MLS Cup, they'll be in a better spot than if somebody else wins it and they are essentially like the last qualifier.
Right.
I think then they get the potential to go into that tougher pot to start with.
Right. Whereas if Atlanta won MLS Cup, then Seattle might go into that U.S. Open Cup champion pot, I guess.
I'd have to go through all of the breakdown of it. CONCACAF gets a little bit weird with how they seed. It's a little strange with that. But
point systems and things like that.
It locked Seattle into it because Toronto doesn't win a spot through MLS play. And that was the other key that comes into this.
Well, so, boy, New York City, Atlanta, Seattle, LAFC, Montreal out of MLS. That's a pretty robust, and we don't know what the teams will look like in 2020, but that's a pretty robust group from MLS going into CONCACAF Champions League.
It's going to be fun starting in February. We still got, hopefully, 2 more games left, 3 more games left in the Major League Soccer season, and then all the madness of the offseason, 2 expansion teams coming in. I think there's a lot of questions about a lot of different rosters and key players, and we've got them here in Atlanta, and then 2020 could be even bigger.
Yeah, no doubt about it. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. It's all eyes on Toronto for me, and I hope everyone enjoys the weekend. And again, it's like I said on the full-time report last night, it's not lost on me how lucky we are to be seeing this. And I really, really hope that our fans are not taking this for granted.
Same. It's been a wild ride. And thanks to everybody who listened to the radio call last night. My Twitter was blowing up a lot, maybe a little bit more than usual, which was very cool. A lot of people were along for the ride with us. So thanks to everybody who listened. Mike, we'll talk to you on Wednesday, another match day preview on SDH.
All right, guys. Sounds good. Have a good weekend.
You too, dude.
We're going to take a quick break, come back, and get deeper into the Overreaction Friday timeline right after this.
Looking for future leaders we can trust and believe in? Look no further than the high school student athletes right here in Georgia. High school sports teach young people how to be effective leaders. It begins by making their grades and being on time for practice. It includes learning to listen, following directions, accepting responsibility, being a good role model. And it's about respect for officials, opponents, the rules, and each other. The result? It transcends sports. It gives us hope for the future. High school sports. There's so much more than just a game. This message presented by the Georgia High School Association and the Georgia Athletic Directors Association.
Today's show is presented by Apollinsky and Associates, personal injury lawyers with over 30 years of experience, supporters of Atlanta United, Faction, and Inter-Atlanta Youth Football Club. If you've been hurt in a wreck, contact Steve today at steve@aa-legal.com or call in 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
We know that every driver is different, and a one-size policy does not fit all. That's why Country Financial offers a variety of discounts, so you get the coverage you need and the savings you deserve. From good driver to good student, multi-policy to multi-car, we've got a discount to suit every driver. Call Jason Wright at 678-568-6871 today to see what you could save. On Facebook at Jason Wright Agency or by phone at 678-568-6871. Discounts vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Country Preferred Insurance Company, or Country Casualty Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
Welcome back. Soccer Down here. Overreaction Friday. Lots of reactions. Let's get into it.
We got plenty. And so I'll go with Eric Schwartz. Eric talked about Mikey. He says, always believed in that guy. Remember, we likely traded Garza to keep him. Mikey and Mo kept Ilsinho in check, which is no small feat.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd go that far. I think Mikey was the depth option. They cleared the spot to get George Bello time, and the injury took that possibility away. But I think it was more about Bello. But Ambrose was always looked at as the Boy Scout, as Dotson Martino said last year. You know, he's always ready. He's always on call. He's always available to step in as needed, and he's done that many times during his run here in Atlanta. He's been a very valuable part of this club since he joined it out of the expansion draft.
Katie Weaver, before there was Atlanta United, I was a Philly fan, so I knew I wouldn't leave the Bens distraught either way last night. So happy for the Atlanta win, but wasn't easy. Dupe showed up with max effort, created good chances, kept it clean. Hope next season's even better for Curtin and that group.
Yeah, I like Jim Curtin's group. I like the work that Philadelphia puts in. This is a good team. They just need a little bit more. They're not quite there yet. Brendan Aronson is a top young talent. They really missed Kasper Shabilko. With Shabilko, with Robinson, with Parkhurst, this is a different challenge. Both teams were missing big pieces, but you take Shabilko out of Philadelphia, they're different. I want to see where Philly goes from here because they have to continue to improve. They don't spend a ton of money, so how do they look to improve? It looks like they're going to lose Jamero Montero. They could not find a way to get him on a permanent deal or extend his loan. So that's a big hole to lose out of your midfield. How do you replace him? Does Ilsinho still continue to be as effective? Bedoya, Medunjanin, both older players. Are they going to be as effective next year? I like the platform that Philly has built, but they've got to continue to kick on from here.
Daniel Price is officially exhausted. He posted a photo with him with Julian Gressel. And Dan Graham on Overreaction Friday says that Bedoya hurt his team by playing.
No, I don't think it was to that degree. I don't think Bedoya was hurting his team until the end, and they'd already made the other substitutions. So, I mean, and you don't have a choice. Where he was really feeling it. Was he limited? Yeah. But he didn't hurt his team because there wasn't a better option. You know, I mean, it's not like Bedoya said, no, I will not be taken out of this match, and Jim Curtin, no, you will not put a different player in. Alejandro Bedoya, even less than 100%, is better than any of the other options they had. And he's a gamer, man. I mean, he's such a leader with that group. He was important for Philly staying in it and also keeping their focus and their composure. Bedoya is an outstanding pro. So, I mean, he gave a lot more in this one than I thought he could. I did not expect to see him be able to finish this match, and he did.
Katie Weaver again looking at El Trafico. She says LA defense was yee emoji. Wasn't Zimmerman out from a wasn't Zimmerman out from a concussion? If so, why bring him on? I fell asleep, but did his entry shore things up at all for LAFC? Hashtag Georgia boy, hashtag Furman soccer.
Yeah, I didn't get deep into it, so I can't go deep on the analysis of El Trafico yet. Just heard a decent bit of it on the way back and saw bits here and there as we were finishing things up at the Benz last night. Zimmerman did have a very scary head-to-head collision on decision day. He was pulled out of national team camp, and he didn't start last night. He came in off the bench. I just saw like a post-game clip where he looked okay, but I don't know how he played. I don't know how much of an impact he had, and I don't know where he was other than the fact that he was cleared. So
Nathan Pugh, there were a lot of squinty eyes and doubts about at the lineup, but what I see after the match is FDB has a good idea of his assets. Atlanta was fresher, just had better players, and Toronto, we can beat those. Hashtag overreaction Friday.
He mentioned Doug in the tweet, and Doug admitted he was wrong, and it happens. Like that's none of us are 100% in any of our takes about anything. It happens. Plenty of people had questions about this. Doug wasn't the only one who questioned this lineup. Like everybody I talked to questioned the lineup. It was pretty common everywhere, whether you were in the stands, whether you were in the press box, whether you were at home, wherever you were, it was pretty common to be concerned about that lineup. Frank de Boer knew what he was doing, and he knew the value that Mikey Ambrose brought. He knew the value that Florentin Pogba brought. I was worried. The element that worried me the most was Pogba and LGP together. That was the one that I didn't expect. I had a feeling Ambrose would be in consideration. We talked about it on the full-time report Saturday after the match, that Mikey Ambrose was a name you had to remember as a potential starter here. But Pogba-LGP was the pairing. I did not think that would be the line of four. I thought if you went line of four, it would be Lorenowitz with LGP on the back line, and you'd bring Remedi or Mo Adams into the midfield to replace Lorenowitz. But Pogba was very composed in his performance here. He played like a top-flight center back, and I don't think his personality is necessarily to be a top-flight center back. I think, he said it. He's more comfortable in the middle. Like he's liked playing as a defensive midfielder, which we haven't seen. We've seen him as part of a three-man back line. We've seen him as a left back at times. I think he's more comfortable in those roles because he's able to go forward. He's able to go take space and impact the game in those ways. But last night, he picked the right times to go. He did everything you need to do as a center back. He didn't get caught. I don't feel like he was caught out of position once.
No. And Doug finishes off that particular tweet by saying, he's admitted when he was wrong, but as long as it's okay. See, how did he phrase it? He says, I've got no problem doing that as long as all are okay when I point out when I'm right. Smiley face.
I try not to point out that too much, but I'll point it out for a second since Doug opened the door. Just
Chris Ashley, his biggest...
Whoa. I'm not done pointing things out yet.
Yeah, who was closest on the final scores for both matches?
Closest? Who got it?
Well, no, I'm talking both of them.
I'm not talking both of them. I'm talking who got the score last night.
Oh, you punched it. You had the perfecta.
I nailed it. I got the 2-0. I even got one of the goal scorers and when the first goal would come. I was feeling it last night.
You had 4-2 for the late one, so you were there at one point.
I said extra time. I don't care. I'm not worried about that. 2-0, and people thought I was crazy. 2-0. If Doug says that you can point it out when you're right, I'm going to point that one out.
Hey, yeah.
I said there'd be a goal in the first 15. I said in the last 15 of the first half. Didn't quite get that one. It took till the last 15 of the match. But, yeah, I mean, it just – I think a lot of it was getting the vibe from this group that they were so confident going into it. And I did think there were big questions for Philadelphia and what they would bring to the table. And I had a lot of faith in what Frank DeBoer and Atlanta United would bring to the field. And they were great. I mean, that early goal, it was the important part of it. The early goal is what made all of that happen, because if you don't get that, it becomes a different game. You get that early goal, it takes Philadelphia out of the let's grow into the game, let's pick our spots to go, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. When you get that early goal, Philadelphia has to start getting more aggressive and has to start running themselves into tired legs earlier, and it just made the game play out very differently.
Chris Ashley says his biggest overreaction Friday thought is about how cool it was to sync up 92.9 The Game to the TV cast thanks to the pause feature on the radio app. He loved hearing the two of you while watching instead of the national guys.
Yeah, I think I think that's a 24-hour situation, so I haven't gone back to look. I think you might be able to go listen to it now if you want to. But yeah, the pause live radio feature on radio.com, very, very, very cool. I'm really glad they added that, not just for us, just in general. So it's very cool if you want to go back, you miss out and you don't have time to go find the podcast or you're waiting on things to be uploaded. If you see that Darren Eales is on, which he's on with Dukes and Bell every week, and you miss it live, go scroll back to the show and pick it up. If you hear about last night, Felipe Cardenas was on with Dukes and Bell right before the game, go check it out. See what he had to say. That type of stuff is a very, very cool feature. Radio.com, the app is great. I mean, not just for 92.9, but for all the stations they have on there. That pause function, that's a game changer.
Jim Lepp says that Joseph's goal is now his favorite in the Stripes. There was the one from December 8th, 2018. He says that last night was an incredible strike, and if Gazan doesn't make the save, who knows?
A lot of people like that Joseph goal from last night. It doesn't beat Cincinnati for me. That Cincinnati goal is just absurd. But it was really good last night. It was really, really good. Both goals were very, very high quality.
Shiva, man of the match for me was the 17s. No one can beat the intensity of our fans. And then her second thought of 3. 2, Bob Bradley, I have a lot of respect for you, but when you're asked a question, answer with class. 3, I saw a team playing with confidence yesterday. Confidence can hopefully take us all the way to the cup.
Yeah, there's been a lot of back and forth about the Bradley thing. Scott Moore, who listens to this show, he said it was a dumb question, and he said the tweet that Sebastian Salazar posted seemed petty, was a response out of insecurity, not professionalism. Take the criticism and move on. If it was criticism, I would agree with Scott, but it wasn't. It was, I think it got personal, and that's not okay. Carlos Vela has had questions about his performances in big games throughout his career. I mean, it's not new, and it wasn't new before the season, and Bob spoke on it. It's still something. I don't think Sebastian Salazar was trying to be insulting about it. I think he was trying to open a door for Bradley to praise his player and talk about how, this was the question about this player.
After their January conversation.
Yeah, but this is what he did this season, and this is what he did tonight. Because in previous big games, LAFC hadn't done anything. I mean, that's a fact. You can get defensive and say what you want, but last year their biggest win was against Columbus. This year, they've had bigger wins. They beat Seattle at home. They had some other games that they got big performances, but they lost in the quarterfinals of the Open Cup. They hadn't beaten the Galaxy until last night. There were questions. And it was a valid, fair question, in my opinion. If you're irritated by it, you can still answer the question, show your irritation, and back up your player. And a lot of people have said he was defending his player. Well, he questioned his player before the season, so, I'm just saying. And he could have done it in a different way and still accomplished all that and not made the focus about him. I was a little disappointed that he handled it that way. I understand the chip on the shoulder thing. I do think he feels like he has a lot to prove. He shouldn't, but he does. But this was a little too much for me. And I don't think Salazar did anything wrong by tweeting the explanation about why he asked the question. And I definitely don't think he did anything wrong by asking the question. Go ask the Mexican media about what the thoughts have been about Carlos Vela as a big game player. Go ask the Mexican media and see what happens.
Lewis Martin with an on-par reaction. 4 of the 6 best managers in MLS have their clubs in the conference final. Yes, they have the talent, but these managers know how to use talent.
Yeah. There's a number of good managers in this league. That's been one of the big developments in MLS in recent years is the level of manager that is now working in the league. I think that's a really important thing. It's an important element to development. And it's an important element to the quality of play continuing to improve. You can just go sign great players, but when you have managers who can elevate players like Frank de Boer, when you have managers who can elevate a player like Bob Bradley, he's elevated Carlos Vela. He's told Vela, and this is another reason why I think the question's valid. He told Vela in the beginning, and go watch the ESPN Plus documentary that was really good about LAFC from last season. He challenged Vela to think of himself and try to play like Lionel Messi. He's like, stop thinking you're just a good player. Like, think you can be the best in the world. Look at what Messi does here. Do that. You can do that. You have that ability. That's a great manager who's getting Vela, who's been a player who a lot of people have questioned, how much does he really want it? Does he really enjoy it? Does he love playing? Bradley's pushed him to be even better. That's great management. We know what Matias Almeida has done. I think Jim Curtin did an amazing job this year. I think Dome Tarrant did a great job with New York City. Lots of great managers in the league, and I expect that to continue to improve. I think Tab Ramos going to Houston is adding another great manager to the league, a manager who is young as a club manager. This is his first gig, but a manager who understands the game in a great way. I think he's going to do great with young players through his time with the U20 World Cup, and a manager who's developed in the right way. I remember early interviews with Tab when he, I think, first joined the national team program on the youth side, and he talked about when he retired and started thinking about where he wanted to go, talking to managers who said, look, don't go join a pro staff right away. Start with the kids and like the real kids. Like, go coach at a youth club. Like, figure out what it's like to coach young kids and then move up. Get that whole background of knowledge because it will help you in the long run. And it has. And Tab should be a great addition to the Houston Dynamo. So I think that's an area that the league has really improved on, but still can continue to, because it's a great place for a manager to work. I always thought part of the appeal for Tata Martino was that you come here and do well, you have a big impact, a bigger impact than maybe some leagues where one team is outspending the rest of the league by double the third place spending team is. Well, that team should be winning games. And the manager is a lesser element of that. But in MLS, it's even. It's much more even. It's much more difficult to accomplish success. And the manager has a huge role in it.
Hutchison wants to know if Toronto will have the legs to keep up with Atlanta United. He says that they looked pretty spry against NYCFC the other night.
This is going to be an interesting one because I need to sit down and study Toronto a little bit more. Pozuelo as a false nine is the element that is a little unique. I want to see what the defense looks like. Omar Gonzalez, if he is able to come back, he makes them better. Toronto got a lot of their pieces in late. We talked about it a lot early in the season. The Giovinco stuff, dragged on longer than it should have. Vasquez left, and they didn't replace him straight away. They got Pozuelo late in the first window of the season, and he's played, I think he's played 54 or 55 matches since he had a break, because he started in July of 18 in Belgium, played through, came straight to Toronto, has played all the way through. Like, he just hasn't had a break in a long time, and he doesn't look like he really needs it. But they added a lot of other pieces late in the summer window, and it took them a little bit of time to gel, and it's still a work in progress, I think. I still don't think they've completely put everything together, but they're going to, like I said, I think any of the 4 teams can win MLS Cup, Toronto included. They can come in here. They've been in these moments before, whether it's Canadian Championship, whether it's playoffs, whether it's MLS Cups. They know what it takes to do this. They're also a team that has no problem coming in and being defensive and making Atlanta break them down. So it won't be easy by any stretch. I don't care what the seed says. It won't be easy by any stretch on Wednesday.
Five Stripe Day. Actually, tell you what. Snowman came in this morning. Jimmy Vance over at 92.9. He says it was probably the best Atlanta United performance of the season last night. Controlled the match, especially second half. Great team effort with a different lineup and shape. That's his overreaction for the day.
Top 5. I'm not going to put it quite there. I think Portland. I think maybe NYC at home. I think Club America I'll put ahead of it, but not by a ton. The Portland game is still the one for me.
And we got a lot of folks with stuff, so I'm going to try to get through it as best we can here. Five Stripe Daily. If you're Toronto FC, how the heck do you game plan against Atlanta? 3 at the back, 4 at the back, sometimes Pitty, sometimes Tito. Maybe Miles is back. Maybe Escobar's bombing forward. Maybe it's Gressel. So much talent and so many combinations, it has to be scary.
Yeah, if you're Toronto, I think you have to figure out what works best for you. I don't think you're going to really be able to try to game plan because, okay, if you look at what Atlanta did against New England and what they did a lot of the second half of the season, 3-5-2, okay, that 3-5-2 looked pretty different, whether it was Pitty as the second forward, whether it was Barco as the second forward. You do have the Tito equation that can factor in what the midfield looked like if you had Barco and Pitty on the field together versus what we saw against New England where you had Heinemann, Nagbe, Lorenowitz. If you go 3-5-2, what does the back line look like? What are the wing backs going to look like? Now you have to think about Mikey Ambrose in the equation. If you go 4-4-2, 4-3-3, whatever you want to call it, okay, you've got a lot of different possibilities and where you can move the pieces that way. If you're Toronto, I don't even know if you can truly worry about that. I think you just have to put your best 11 on the field that you feel like that can play the best for you. And they're going to have to be drilled on what the possibilities are, but you don't know how Atlanta's going to come out. That's a great spot to be in. It's an advantage that has emerged out of this for Atlanta. So if you're Greg Vanney, you're going back and watching a lot of tape, and you're trying to guess on what Frank DeBoer is going to do in this lineup on Wednesday.
Ike Man says that his biggest overreaction Friday, especially after the first few minutes, was the fact that LGP's not on yellow card suspension next week.
Yeah, LGP and Lorenowitz both. I thought Lorenowitz was the one who would get caught in a situation where he had to commit a foul tactically. And look, you can't worry about that. I mean, I know it's something fans will worry about. I get it, but you can't play the game worried that way. Just because you've got to get there before you worry about the accumulation. You've just got to qualify, and if that means you've got to commit a foul that could get you a yellow, then you do it. You just didn't want to pick up a cheap yellow, and neither player put themselves in that position last night. I thought Jeff had a couple fouls. LGP had a couple fouls that some referees are going to throw yellow on, but they were fouls that needed to be made. They were plays that had to happen. So you let the chips fall where they may, but you have to win, and Atlanta did.
Okay. Tafka has a quick story for us this morning, and it's a feel-good. His 8 to 9 year old league finished up their season last night, and his star Enganche, thanks to Jason, because he couldn't remember the word, got hurt in the first few minutes, had to come off. He'll be okay. His mom told me how much the particular season has meant to him, building his confidence, making soccer not just a fun sport, but more of an obsession for him. Her mom asked me what other ways they could expose him to soccer other than rec league, gave her the obvious answers, futsal in the winter, look into whether travel soccer is an option, etc. Also told her how important it is to just watch, but attend soccer matches. Told her about Soda City FC in the area and that there are full pro teams in Greenville Triumph, Charleston Battery. Last, told her after the game about my huge fandom for Atlanta United, how easy and fun it is to watch on TV or attend games. Told her that the team was playing at 8 p.m. on ESPN2, let him watch. And then I took the third-year keychain gift off of my key ring and handed it to her to give to him. An hour later, I got a picture of him with a bed made up on the couch watching Atlanta United and holding the keychain. He had begged his parents to let him stay up for the game. A new Atlanta United fan is born. A new soccer addict is made. My heart is full.
That's the difference between, I think, what American soccer has been and what it can be, is that passion for it. Because when we talk about players from overseas and how the game feels different, or how, some of these moments, you talk about Boca and River, for example, from this week, it felt like a big deal because it was a big deal. That feeling doesn't just happen. It takes time. And for kids now to have this connection with Atlanta United and have that feeling, it gets to a point to where you feel that when you see the jersey, when you see the badge, when you see the legendary players, and you feel for the club. And then for kids, that transfers over to how they play, and you see that they feel that way about the game. And it's not just, I like to play soccer, I'm a soccer player. It's, this is mi vida. This is life. This is everything to me. And when it gets to that point is when you get things that are special. And you never know about any kid if they're going to become a great player, but I think the greatest players have that feeling. And it doesn't just start because they started to play the game. Go ask great players worldwide. When you get into the conversation with them about when they were a kid and how they felt about the game, or whatever their favorite team is, or their favorite players that meant a lot to them, you see that kid come back out in those conversations. And that's what creates the greatest. People have consistently talked smack about Pity Martinez, and he posts stuff about River or Tito Villalba. Nobody said this about Tito, but it's the same thing. Tito posts stuff about San Lorenzo. Well, both of them won Copa Libertadores with those clubs. That's a feeling that none of us know. That's a feeling that is, you can't replicate that. And they have a feeling for those clubs deep in their heart. I mean, Tito especially grew up across the street from the San Lorenzo Stadium. It was his dream to play there, and he lifted the Copa Libertadores for that club. Yes, he's going to post pictures about it, and he's going to celebrate it, and he's going to tweet at his former teammates, and he's going to tweet his support for the club. Yes. There's nothing at all wrong with that. And they will do the same for Atlanta United in time. And you will also see a player like George Bello, who has all the potential in the world to play in any club in the world that he wants to, because he's got the potential to be that good of a player. You hope that feeling for Atlanta United is instilled in him, and I think it is, where that he goes wherever in the world, he's going to tweet about Atlanta United. And he's going to share Atlanta United pictures on Instagram. And he's going to share that love for the club. If you become a great player, if you become a special player worldwide, if you become a fan, if you become somebody who works in the game, the best at it comes from that passion. So, I Tofka nailed it when he talked about it's not just going to play in teams, it's not just doing this, it's about developing that passion and that feeling for the game. That's what makes it more than just a game.
Ivo Shandor asks, if Darlington Nagbe's the table setter, is Mikey Ambrose the busboy? I mean, hey, those dishes aren't clearing themselves.
It's not a bad way to look at it. I mean, I don't want to put that on Mikey. I like the Boy Scout thing that Tata Martino said, but yeah, like Mikey, you need those players. I think the comparison that was always used in the past was you needed piano players and piano carriers, and not every player is a piano player. Not every soccer player is that guy, but you have to have the other pieces too, to allow the rest to do what they do, whether it's Nagbe, whether it's Pitti, whether it's Barco. You have to have the other guys that put that platform together for them. And Mikey Ambrose is absolutely one of those players. I think Mikey's a better technical player than he gets credit for. I think he's a guy who can play, and I think he enjoys playing with guys like Barco and Pitti and Miguel Almiron in the past. He likes to play. He's not just a hardworking left back who isn't a soccer player. Mikey's a soccer player. I mean, Mikey's got some skill. I love it. So you need both, though, to have a successful team. And you can't just do it with a bunch of piano players. Somebody's got to carry the thing.
Both Matt Wagner and Daniel Price addressed VAR and El Trafico. Matt says, I get there'll be missed calls, but the use of VAR is a real issue. Consistency, please. It affects the integrity and credibility of the matches in MLS, not to say it's much better elsewhere. Hashtag Overreaction Friday.
Without knowing how that review went down, I feel like we're all guessing. I was catching it without sound and running around at the bends trying to finalize things before I got out of the building on the LAFC second goal. The replay I saw, there were two elements that I thought needed to be checked. One was just flat out, was it onside or offside? And if I remember right, that's the same half of the field where we were located at Bank of California for radio, where there were a couple very close calls that went LAFC's way. And the angles that I saw, because the camera was right next to us, didn't really give you much of an answer. And I'm assuming that was the same here. But the other element that I thought needed an on-field review was you had two players offside. If you feel like the ball that was played, I think, to Rossi was onside. If the VAR looks at that and says, no, he's onside, you can see it from this angle, blah, blah, blah. Okay, fine. Vela was offside in that as well, and defenders reacted to him. I think it's a valid question for the referee to go look to interpret, because offside is one that I think a VAR can say, yes, he was on, yes, he was off, go make the call. But when it gets to were they an active participant, then that's interpretation, and I feel like it would have been smart for the referee to go look at it, because I thought Vela was an active participant who affected how that played out in the attacking phase of play. So even if you think Rossi's offside, I thought it still should have come back because of Vela being offside where he was. And that would have needed an on-field review.
Jim Lepp says, tell me I'm wrong in 10 years, but Aronson is his generation's Bradley.
No, I think he's a different player. I think he is more of this generation. Man, I don't know if we haven't really had a true playmaker. Like, I think Aronson can be a playmaker. Because I don't see him as a Bradley who sits deeper and sprays passes and plays the American, Pirlo kind of deep-lying playmaker role. And that's what Bradley has turned into. Earlier in his career, Bradley was more of the number 8 who was really good with the late-arriving runs into the attack. I don't think Aronson's that. I think he's more than that in terms of an attacking talent. I'm trying to think of a comparison from an attacker, because he's not a Tab Ramos. I mean, Claudio Reyna was better as a deeper player too, but he's not one of those guys. He's a player that honestly we haven't had very much in the United States, because I think he's a playmaker. I think he's more along the lines of a Barco. I think he's more along the lines of that. Like he's an athletic player who can dribble, who can play. He's going to work hard and he's scrappy. But I think he can pick a pass out. So I don't know if there really is a true American comparison for him, to be honest. I really want to see where he goes. I loved his game last night. I thought he was really good. I thought they had to make the sub the way they did. I understand it because we were going through it. You knew Ilsinho was coming, and you just didn't know what the sub was going to be. I kind of had it down to Aronson was the obvious one because it allowed them to play the 4-2-3-1 the way they wanted. The other option would have been Pico, who I thought was good, or Santos, and eventually they did pull Santos on the next sub. So I thought Aronson was great. I think he's got a lot to give. He'll be a big player for the Union for years to come.
Michael Ruiz, the ball from Pitti was delicious. There isn't a better word for it. Also, Pitti with the hero run back to slow down Fabian. Also, the crowd was loud, especially the last 10 minutes. Those final minutes were bonkers. LFG.
Yes, it was good all the way around. That ball from Pitti, I mean, I could talk about it for 2 more hours. It was that good. It was that good. And that's the type of play that I love that we're seeing American clubs play that way. I love that it's not just kick and chase and a lot of heart and a lot of grit and a lot of fight and a lot of work rate and all. I mean, that stuff's great too. Don't get me wrong, but man, I like some creativity and some special ability that you just don't see every day. And Pitti Martinez has that.
Alex Krupp, they're calling the LA game a classic on the MLS site, but it just seemed like awful defending. Galaxy were giving Rossi miles of space.
Again, I haven't studied it, so I can't say. I mean, a 5-3 game, it can be a classic. I think it's a classic in terms of it's a rivalry. It was the first time LAFC gets the win over the Galaxy. It's a playoff game. It was a classic in all of those senses. I don't know if it was a better played match. I don't know if it was a higher quality of play than other matches we've seen in the postseason, but from a spectacle standpoint, yeah, I can see that.
It's definitely a spectacle. I'll grant you that.
Yeah, and that's okay. I mean, that's fine.
Yeah.
You need those too.
Noah Hendricks felt like Frank de Boer almost waited too long to make his first sub. Philly was getting a whole lot more pressure. What did you think?
No, I didn't get that sense at all. I really, truly thought Philadelphia... I understand the sub going to the 4-2-3-1. You knew it was coming with Ilsinho. And Ilsinho, I mean, he won some dribbles, but he didn't get into any dangerous spots because of the organization from Atlanta. But the sub took Philly away from the 4-4-2, where I thought they were better in pressure and better in containing Atlanta, and allowed Atlanta to get these long, sustained runs of possession where, yeah, they didn't create a ton of chances, but they strung together passes, and they wore Philadelphia down, and they made them less effective. So I thought it was a situation that Philadelphia had to go to it, but it took away effectiveness for them. And there wasn't, to me, an obvious sub for Atlanta to make at that point. I mean, I thought Atlanta was, after the Ilsinho sub, honestly, outside of a couple times that he got a 1v1, I thought Atlanta was in more control than Philadelphia.
Chris Hutchison says it's taken Barco over a year to find his fit with this team. Pitti's been here about a year and now is finding his. Frank de Boer's been here less than a year and is finding his. Progress doesn't typically happen immediately.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't, and that's a lot of leagues that's the case. I think somewhat, though, there is a lack of appreciation for the progression, because I said it last year a lot, and I remember saying it September, I think, when Barco started against DC and created 5 chances in the first half. And people were like, oh, no, Barco's not that good, blah, 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 blah. He's overrated, all the stuff. I mean, and you were getting a lot of that from national folks. It just, no, I didn't think that was the case last year. I think Barco's even better this year. And it feels like what turned the table for Barco was him being a sub who, not a super sub in the Ilsinho sense, but a sub who came on and just ran his socks off last season in the postseason, which is not what he is as a player. I mean, Barco's a special player who creates chances. And, yeah, it's good when he works hard. Yeah, that's great. That's nice. But he's going to make his money on being a special player who creates chances that others can't do. And I thought he did that last year. I think he's even better this year. Pitti had a slower start to the season, but the last 2 months he's been outstanding. And that's why I kept cautioning people on the, he's been benched, he's been dropped for the postseason. No, it was a matchup that Frank didn't like against New England. You got to win these games because that's what you're here for. It's not about playing 11 players who, just because they're paid a certain amount or you paid a certain amount to bring them in. It's about playing the best group to win you the match. And Frank did that against New England. He did it against Philadelphia. He'll do it against Toronto. So the adjustment, that type of stuff, it does take a little bit of time. But also, I think at times there's a very quick rush to judgment that is not fair. And then the progress along the way is not being appreciated as well. Pitti has grown into what he gave you last night this season, but he was better than he got credit for early. Same with Barco. Honestly, same with Frank DeBoer as well. But, yeah, they have not gotten the credit that they deserved, and I think some people thought that they should be the best from day one, and that's just not really fair.
Joe Bost has a futuristic on-par reaction for us this morning. 2020 starting 11 in a 4-3-3. He has Bello, Campbell, LGP, Franco, Julian, P.T. Barco, Joseph, Nagbe, and one more with Gazan. He says, it's not in any order because I'm tired and lazy.
Where's Robinson?
See, there you go.
I mean, I love George Campbell, but no, he's not going to go into a starting lineup straight away. He needs some time. You're talking about a kid who was an academy player for most of the USL Championship season before earning that homegrown deal that takes effect next year. He wasn't even on a USL deal. He wasn't a guy at the beginning of the USL season that you thought was going to be signing a professional deal. Not at all. He was a player you thought would go to college. So give him some time. He'll be better for it. And Robinson, hopefully with LGP, and there's questions. Again, we've talked about it all year long. This team will have some difficult decisions to make on roster, on salary caps, on lots of stuff. And LGP is one of them. Gressel is under contract through next year, but we've talked about it and heard about the negotiations there. There will be talk there. Robinson has signed a new deal, and we had a question about that. It was kind of dropped in the middle of everything last night. The reported terms of the deal, it's a bigger deal than I thought, and that's okay. I'm trying to pull that up now.
$650?
$650. You'll use allocation money to buy it down. It's 3 years with a pretty realistic trigger for an automatic option after the 3 years. Here we go. Michael Ruiz, thank you for sharing it. Sam Stejkal, $650 a season. That's the average per season for 3 guaranteed years. Huge option with a pretty easy auto trigger in 2023. I'm good with it. I mean, Robinson's that good. And that doesn't mean he's here for all of those years, because if he plays for the national team and gets those caps that would make him eligible to get a work permit in England, I think Miles Robinson can make a lot of money. I think he can make a lot of money moving to a big club, because he is a complete defender. He's a complete center back, and he has a level of athleticism that not many center backs have, and it's a level that top coaches are looking for at top clubs. So he'll be here for a while, but I think he's got the potential to go to a big club and make Atlanta United a lot of money and make himself a lot of money. This is the kind of deal that makes sense for that. It makes a lot of sense for that. If you've got the auto trigger in 2023, if he continues to progress the way that he has been, you could be looking at the end of 21 or at the end of 22 a big transfer for Miles Robinson. And that's what you're looking for. You want guys under contract for an extended period of time. You want to have that flexibility and potential moves that can come up, and it is about the money. 100%.
Along those same lines where defense is concerned, Elliot Beeben asks, do you think this version of Atlanta defense in playoffs is better than last year's playoff run?
It's really different. And people who've tried to say it's the same, I mean, no, it's not. Like, don't listen to people who are unequivocally wrong in that regard. Just no, it's not. Last year it was a defend and counter, all hands on deck defensively and counter. That's not how they played last night. That's not how they played against the New England Revolution. It's good, complete play that is responsible defensively. They did not sit back and concede possession. They did not sit back and limit the amount of numbers they were getting forward. They still took risks even last night. Mikey Ambrose was getting forward into the attack. Florentine Pogba stepped forward. Leandro Gonzalez-Pirez didn't step forward as much as he usually does, but he still did. Franco Escobar's a maniac up and down the right wing. I don't know how he plays right back, right wing, sometimes center mid, all at the same time. He did. It was not the sit back and counter approach from last year at all. So they're very different to compare. I think effectiveness, maybe last year was a little better because it was a little more committed to defense. But, man, you're not giving up many shots right now either. 3 shots last night on goal. 3 saves for Brad Gazan. Back-to-back clean sheets. It's pretty good. Let's see how the rest of it goes before we decide which one was better. But they're very different. It's not the same thing.
Joe Boss says, I know it had been kind of awesome to get a chance to host the Cup, but honestly, I kind of want a shot at LAFC, not overlooking TFC. They're a tough match. Hashtag Overreaction Friday.
Whatever happens, happens.
Yep.
Whatever happens, happens. You take care of Toronto, and you'll know who you'll be seeing by the time the game kicks off on Wednesday. And you just take it as it comes. I don't think Atlanta United cares about who's next in front of them. They just want to go and win every game that they have left. And right now, if they win Wednesday, they've got one more after that. I think it's all about getting win number 30 for the calendar year. That's all that matters. They don't care who it comes against.
Our friend Howard over at Soccer Metrics says, may I say how proud I am of Pity Martinez. He could have easily given an interview to TYC Sports or Olé, but he didn't. He put in the work and was there when needed. Fantastic performance. And then, the @DeBoer must go feed has now switched to hashtag Berhalter out, LOL.
That is funny. The stuff with Pity, man, I mean, look, we saw the comments. Yeah, people want to bring him back up, and whatever. It's just people want to be whatever they want to be on the national side and try to figure out ways to diminish it. But players talk. Worldwide players talk. Do you wish they didn't? Yes. Do you wish that you didn't have to have the conversations that were had in a variety of mediums this season about things that Pitti said or things that LGP said or things that Barco said at All-Star, which I didn't even think was a big deal, or reactions that Joseph had on the field or whatever? Yes. Like, in a perfect world, it's all sunshine and rainbows and everybody sitting around eating strawberry shortcake after a game. Yeah. That's not the real world. People get angry when they don't play. People get angry when they think the game should be played one way and the manager thinks a different way. They get angry when you're not winning. Yeah, because these guys take it very seriously and they're incredibly passionate about what they do. And what I thought was the thing that everybody lost in all of it as it happened this summer, I thought even with comments that were questioning, comments that were not ideal, I didn't think the respect was lost. And I thought that was really clear in all of it. There was still a level of respect. There was a disagreement, and there was disagreement about role and disagreement about style, and all that's fine. But there was still respect. And that's why you have what you have now. And that's why you have a player in Pity Martinez who he went to River, didn't immediately light the world up. Came to Atlanta, much quicker transition, but still didn't light it up. He didn't sit back and pout. He didn't sit back and just whine. Yeah, you can show me all the Pity cams you want when he gets subbed and he kicked a chair in front of him. Because he takes it seriously. I'm okay with that. Because what does he do in a game last night when you need him to deliver? He does. He does. So I don't care if he kicks a chair. I don't care if he says something and says he wants to play this way or he wants the team to play this way or he wants to play more. Good. Cool. Bring it when it matters. And he did. So whatever you want to start citing about, it was the most combustible organization in Major League Soccer, get out of here with that nonsense. If it was combustible, it would have combusted. And you would not be getting a team that has not given up a goal in the postseason since stoppage time at Red Bull Arena, where you had a 3-goal lead and there was a minute remaining in that game, and it's off of a set-piece scrum. And, the only other postseason goal you've given up was when you had a 3-goal aggregate lead against NYC. So don't give me the combustible stuff. Don't give me the questions. Don't give me the Frank DeBoer doesn't know what he's doing. Don't give me the Pity Martinez isn't good enough to start. Don't give me any of that anymore, and just respect what this team has done. That's all I hope happens from everybody. And because there's people locally who have still tried to cling on to DeBoer out, and there's people locally who've still tried to diminish the credit being given. You're 90 minutes away from going back to MLS Cup. Not many teams in Major League Soccer history have been able to accomplish that.
Handful before we go.
All right.
Chris Hutchison has a math question. If we make it to MLS Cup, will that make 50 games played this year?
Ooh, I keep mixing up my math. I know it would be, if you win MLS Cup, it would be win number 30. This is important. Let me see if I can do math on the fly.
Is
all right,
34
games. No, hold on. 34 games in the regular season. 4 in CONCACAF, so that gets you to 38. 1 Campeones Cup gets you to 39. 5 in the Open Cup gets you to 44. 45 against the Revolution, 46 against Philly, 47 on Wednesday, 48 would be the MLS Cup match. That's competitive games. It's not including preseason or anything. Did I miss any?
No, I don't think so.
34, 4 in CONCACAF early, Campeones Cup, 5 in Open Cup, 2 so far in postseason with 1 more to come, and if you win that, you get 1 more after that. Yeah. 48 would be the max number of games this season. And I went back through and looked at MLS history, and I didn't go back past 2008 yet, but the most matches in a calendar year for an MLS team that I could find so far is 2011 Seattle, who played 48. Because they played the 34-game season, they played 4 in the Open Cup, but they played in a group stage in CONCACAF and played 8 games in CONCACAF and 2 in the postseason. They didn't get near MLS Cup, but they played more CONCACAF games because of the format of the Champions League at that time. 48's the most I've seen, and if Atlanta gets to MLS Cup, that will be game number 48. Nobody, I need to go back and look at the win total, but I don't think anybody has notched 30 calendar wins. I don't think anybody's done that. So that's where you're at. The other stat from last night that jumped out to me, and I thought it was a key element that Atlanta didn't just sit back and bunker with the 1-0 lead late. They wanted the second goal. In home games, in all competitions since the club started, now with this win, Atlanta United, when they score 2 or more goals, 37-1-3. 41 times they've scored 2 or more goals. They've only lost 1 of those in all competitions. That was Minnesota in 2017. 2 of the draws, though, Toronto. 2017 and 2018 regular season. So it's difficult, but you've got a team in Toronto that has dealt with Atlanta getting multiple goals and found a way to get a result. They get a result, that's going to take them to extra time and potentially penalties on Wednesday. But the second goal at home has been the kill shot for Atlanta United.
Michael Ruiz performing a public service for us this morning. Just in case Atlanta United makes it to MLS Cup in Los Angeles, there are flights for $300 to LAX on American FYI.
We'll see if there's still that on a Wednesday. Or if you're feeling really confident, you'll know where it's going to be on Tuesday night after LAFC in Seattle.
Yep. FC Waffle, how many teams in MLS this season have had as many challenges as Atlanta United has? Personnel injuries, scheduling, call-to-match compression. It's amazing what we've done this season to this point when you think about that.
It's 100% amazing because I think the season in terms of challenges that Atlanta United's had is comparable to what Toronto had last year. And remember how that one ended up. They won the Canadian Championship, but they didn't get to the MLS playoffs. So, yeah, 100%. I mean, it's ridiculous. And instead of, praising that, and instead of giving that the proper respect, you're getting comments about, well, Atlanta wasn't the better team last night. They didn't play better. They were just the more talented team.
Good enough.
Good enough. Or the nonsense about, they compromised and blah, 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 blah. Stop. You don't get here if you don't know what you're doing. You don't get here if you're not good enough. Just stop. Just stop the nonsense.
Chris Hutchison has decided to alter FTB's last name slightly, and he's now Frank DeBalls.
That's a good one. I like that. That was a ballsy lineup last night. That was a ballsy way to play, and it paid off. Paid off big.
James McClatchy. How does the presence of PT change the play of Barco? Barco seemed to disappear at times.
One comment. Heath Bradley, I want to make it clear. That's at home about the 2 goals. It's at home. They're at home in any competition. When they score 2 goals, they've only lost once. The LAFC game doesn't qualify. That was on the road.
The question from James McClatchy this morning, how does the presence of PT change the play of Barco? Barco seemed to disappear at times last night. Did Barco hang back more? He was such a presence in recent games, but not last night.
Because you played through both Pitti and Barco. It wasn't just playing through Barco. So it's just sharing it more. Barco was more on the wing, although he didn't stay on the wing. So that limited it a little bit more too, which that surprised me. I thought it might be Pitti out wide. Pitti gave you an enganche type of performance, and I don't think that's necessarily who he is. I think Pitti's more of a killer in the final third as opposed to the one you're playing through. But, man, he's given you multiple games now where he's played more as that player. It gives Barco a little more license to run at people, and it gives him a little more freedom to pick his spots. It's just different. It's just a different game. So, Barco in this role, he didn't have the same role as he did against New England. Against New England, you needed to play through him more. Here, you could play through him some, but you could also play through Pitti. So it just divided the responsibilities up a little bit more.
Last one on the board comes from Kefsey. Joseph was twirling the knife in his hands early and put it between the teeth for the second goal that looked a certainty when it arrived at Julian's foot. Hashtag Overreaction Friday.
Oh, I'm not going to say it looked a certainty, the second goal when it arrived at Julian's foot, because the second goal, I mean, that's a bomb from Gressel. That's any quarterback putting it on a dime. And that's difficult. And it didn't look like a certainty for it, because Gressel picks it up at the top of his own 18. He hits it 25 yards away from his own goal and puts it over Elliott, bending around McKenzie, who I think lost it a little bit. And it falls to Joseph, who buries it. Joseph did a lot on that one, and it's a great ball from Gressel, but I didn't think it looked a certainty. I think McKenzie kind of lost it a bit, because that's just a ridiculous ball from Gressel to hit that much quality. I mean, he picked it up at the top of the arc. He took a touch, and he hit it, I'm guessing 55, 60 yards on the fly with a right to left, bending it in. The more I'm looking at it right now, I take less away from it and saying that McKenzie lost it a bit and saying it's just a great ball from Gressel. But Joseph still had a lot to do. So I wouldn't go certainty, but that's the play you make with that point in the match. That's the play you make because it's no risk. Gressel hits that ball. If he mishits it, all right, Philadelphia regains possession 30 yards from their own goal. You're good. You've got 5-4-1 behind the ball. You're good. So that's the ball you hit at that time. And Gressel delivered and Joseph delivered and put the game away. Whew. So many things to talk about today. Thanks to all of you for all the reactions. I thought I'd run out of gas like an hour ago. And, man, this game was so good and so exciting, and this team played so well that it gives you life, doesn't it? It gives you a boost. If you love the game, you love the way that this team approached it, and you love the way that this team played in it. It's just a great performance from a group that has been questioned many times this year, and I think many times unfairly, and they just keep delivering. And whatever else you get out of this season, I don't think you can take anything away from it. It's been an outstanding 2019 for Atlanta United, but there's a chance to put more hardware in the trophy case, and it starts on Wednesday with the Eastern Conference Championship. Atlanta United hosting Toronto FC. We'll talk about it a lot next week. Get ready. Get your tickets. Get in the building. You don't want to miss out on this. This is going to be the best team in MLS in 2017 against the best team in MLS from 2018, with potentially, if they take care of business on Tuesday, the best team from MLS in 2019 waiting to host MLS Cup, or Seattle pulls the upset, and then they're going to come to Atlanta or go to Toronto, depending on how it goes. There's a lot of stuff to talk about next week. We'll get to all of that. Couple things about this weekend. No MLS this weekend. NWSL Championship on Sunday. Make some time for this. Should be a great match. North Carolina Courage, Chicago Red Stars. We'll have a special 1v1 with Mitch Northam from Pro Soccer USA. He'll be at the NWSL Media Day today in North Carolina. We're going to catch up with him after that, talk about the final, talk about all the big news coming out of the NWSL, and get you set for the final. It's a big game. Keep an eye on it. We're going to talk a lot about that on Monday as we start previewing the conference championships in MLS, USL Championship, playoffs as well, all on ESPN+. Get ready for those this weekend. Lots of big soccer this weekend to talk about, to watch. You're looking for a big game locally? Come out and join us in Brookhaven for Oglethorpe and Barry, two Georgia schools that have been playing the sport for a long, long time. It's always an intense rivalry. Last year it went to extra time in the conference semifinals. Will be a really good one on Senior Day. The women play at 4:30. The men play at 7. If you can't join us, Jess and I will have the call for you on gopetrals.com. We'll blast that link out tomorrow afternoon. All the soccer, that's not even getting into the soccer over there component, is it? There's so much going on right now this time of year. It's a lot of fun. Lots of stuff to talk about this weekend. Lots of stuff to talk about on Monday. We'll be back. I guess we can call it Overreaction Monday. I mean, even though we had a lot of reaction under all of it today, we'll go ahead and call it an Overreaction Monday. I think that's fair. We'll be back at 9 o'clock for that on Monday morning. Thanks, everybody. Talk to you then. Have a great weekend. Mucha plati, y'all.
Mucha plati.